Novel Empire. Immortal God of Battle. Chapter 481 Five Flowers Ghost. Damn it, what is that? Many Heavenly Desolation calendar martial artists were shocked. This ghost hand was much bigger and more powerful than the previous ghost hands. The dense ghost aura that covered the ghost hand made the martial artists by the river feel dizzy and their ears buzzed. The flower killer's pupils constricted as he said, "My life is over." At this moment, a shadow suddenly soared above the river, followed by a fierce beam of sunlight descending from the sky. The daylight directly hit the giant ghost hand. The ghost hand suddenly spasmed and instantly turned into countless fragments. "Ha, sun god technique, that's my junior brother Xiang Nan." Du Shuyuan and the others cheered happily. This time, Xiang Nan had earned enough face for the Haran sect. Xiang Nan pulled the flower killer's arm, and under the fierce sunlight, he successfully jumped to the other side of the river. The flower killer had just struggled back from his death and his face was still a little pale. He turned to look at Xiang Nan, only to find that Xiang Nan's expression was indifferent. "If you don't have the strength, don't do such a dangerous thing." Xiang Nan hugged his shoulders and said, "I can save you this time, but not the next time." These words ridiculed the contempt of the people in the pavilion for Xiang Nan like a slap on the face of an assassin. The assassin was going to say something polite to Xiang Nan, but when he heard Xiang Nan say that, he snorted coldly, "Who wants you to meddle in other people's affairs?" Xiang Nan smiled disdainfully, hard-mouthed. The killer took out 40 small porcelain bottles and crushed the petals of the Permitha flower into phosphor powder by hand before placing them in the bottle. At this time, on the other side of the river, the martial practitioners of other powers whispered to each other, and everyone's eyes fell on Xiang Nan. This kid's cultivation technique is very peculiar. It seems that Du Shuyuan is not lying. He can really help us. Chi, although his cultivation technique is not bad, we can still kill ghosts after obtaining the pollen of the Permitha flower. At this time, the flower killer had already filled all the porcelain bottles with pollen and said, "Go back." The two of them turned around. The river was already boiling. The entire surface of the river was covered in black arms that were entangled with each other, as if the entire river was made up of these arms. This time, the flower killer wasn't afraid anymore. He stepped on the flowers with his feet, stained with fluorescent pollen, and then jumped across the river. A large number of ghost hands stretched out again to grab the killer's ankle. The killer snorted coldly and his feet quickly alternated like a pair of scissors. His fierce legs had turned the ghost hands into ashes. So pollen has such a miraculous effect. Xiang Nan was thoughtful. The assassin ran to the other side of the river and didn't plan on waiting for Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan smiled. He drew down a beam of sunlight and used a more powerful method to forcefully cross the river. Under the intense daylight bombardment, those ghost hands didn't even have the ability to reach Xiang Nan before being shattered by the daylight. "Good brother, how are you?" Meng Dai hugged Xiang Nan's arm proudly and thought to herself, "I'll let you underestimate me. Now you know how amazing my brother Xiang Nan is." "It's fine." Xiang Nan smiled. The flower killer handed the porcelain bottles to everyone. There were 6 teams from Wu Yuanli and 3 teams from the Heavenly Desolation calendar. Because some teams had different members, there were only 32 people. The flower killer said, "Take a small amount of pollen and apply it on your weapon. It can cause fatal damage to ghosts and monsters, but remember to use it with caution. Every time you use a weapon, you will consume a portion of the pollen." Meng Dai said, "It's fine to take more pollen. Why save so much money?" The flower warrior sneered, do you think we didn't expect it? However, once the pollen leaves the flower petals, it will disappear after an hour. No matter how much you take, it will be a waste. Let's go." After saying that, the flowering martial cultivator took the lead and rushed out. Afterwards, everyone began to run for a long distance. This time, Xiang Nan was following Du Xiuyuan. Although Du Xiuyuan was at the 7th level of origin return, he was still not at the 9 purities cosmos skill. In comparison, he was indeed inferior to the other martial artists. In order to take care of Du Xiuyuan's face, Xiang Nan naturally wouldn't say that he wanted to protect him. "Wait, we're here." In front of them, a Heavenly Desolation calendar martial artist raised his right hand, signaling everyone to stop. The martial artist took out an 8 gossip compass and looked at the pointer on it. Senior brother Shen Liang left several marks on the 5 flowers ghost. 2 miles away, there is a 5 flowers ghost. Let's sneak closer. Don't alarm the snakes. That kid named Xiang Nan. The martial artist looked at Xiang Nan and said, "Your cultivation technique is quite special. Don't be lazy when you fight later. Otherwise, I'll kick you out of the team and you won't be able to get any benefits." "Is that how you beg for help?" Xiang Nan hugged his shoulders and said indifferently. The martial artist didn't want to waste any more time, so he glared at Xiang Nan and said, "Everyone listen to my orders. No one needs to attack in advance. If you scare away the ghost, don't blame me for being impolite to him. Prostrate. Forward." All the martial artists lay on the ground, supporting their bodies with their hands as they moved forward silently. Dream Butterfly lay on Xiang Nan's back. The withered grass was dense, about half a meter tall, and the crowd of talented people were rapidly advancing. Each of them had high fighting spirit, but they were still nervous. A strong man leaned over and whispered in Xiang Nan's ear, "This woman doesn't have a martial arts realm. What are you bringing her for? Quickly leave her behind. It's not your turn to judge. I will protect her myself," Xiang Nan said. The strong man laughed coldly, "Then I have agreed that even if she gets the benefits, she won't be able to do anything." Shoo! Suddenly, a burst of booing came from the left front. Everyone looked along the bushes and saw a figure standing on a strange tree. The tree was like a ghost grasping its teeth, as if 2 large claws were entangled with each other, tangling with each other to grow out. As for the ghost shadow on the treetop, it stood quietly under the moonlight, silent. Xiang Nan looked carefully. The figure was 3 meters tall. His entire body was covered in a black shell, shining like a mirror. On both elbows of that thing, a sharp black bone extended backwards, and there was a blade on the outside of the bone. The lines on this thing's body were extremely smooth, as if it was born for speed. Every part of his body could perfectly avoid the resistance of the wind. That's it. The Heavenly Desolation calendar martial artist who had been giving orders nodded his head and slowly raised his right hand. "Everyone, spread out and surround me from all directions. Once my arm is waved down, we will immediately attack. There is no mistake." Hearing this, everyone quickly dispersed. Xiang Nan also wanted to leave with Dream Butterfly on his back, but he was grabbed by the Desolate Calendar martial artist and said in a low voice, "You, follow me." Chapter 482 Dirty Business. The Desolate Calendar martial artist said to Xiang Nan, "My name is Xiao Hui. You can see my face clearly. Don't pay attention to anyone during the battle. Just listen to my orders. Remember, to listen to my orders is to save everyone." And Xiao Hui Xiang Nan's heart skipped a beat. Could this person be Xiaoman's brother? Xiang Nan couldn't think too much about it. After the other martial artists quickly took their positions, and Xiao Hui's raised right hand slashed down abruptly. The 30 martial artists didn't hesitate and quickly rushed out. Xiang Nan also intended to attack, but Xiao Hui grabbed his arm and said, "I said, listen to my orders." The ghost on the tree immediately discovered traces of humans. It slowly turned its head, and 3 eyes on its face flickered with a faint green light. As expected, 3 of its pupils were petals. At first glance, it looked like a 5-petal flower. At this moment, the martial artists had already displayed their respective abilities. They had slashed out a large amount of sword light and blade light towards the 5 flowers ghost monster. They had already used their Yuan Qi palms and Yuan Qi fists to attack the 5 flowers ghost monster. For a moment, strong winds rose from the scene. These people were all extremely powerful. Even Du Xiuyuan should be considered outstanding amongst martial artists of the same realm. However, he was unable to show any strength here. It could be seen how powerful the others were. The 4 flower killers were the most ruthless. The 4 of them instantly disappeared. When they reappeared, they were already beside the 5 flower ghost. Furthermore, they had already slashed the 5 flower ghost hundreds of times with their sudden appearance. In each killer's hand was a pair of double-handed lancets with a long forearm. The blades were black, and the blades were extremely sharp. Every time the lancet was sliced out, even the air made a chi-chi sound, as if the sky had been sliced open. Such a powerful attack struck the 5 flowers ghost, but it only left behind dense small scratches beneath its hard black shell. The assassin immediately retreated without any reluctance to fight. A round of attacks was instantly released, then instantly disappeared, and they fled into the distance. This was the characteristic of the assassin's attacks. At the same time, the strong men of the 5 berserk organizations jumped up high. The 5 people were entangled with each other. 2 of them were legs, 2 were arms, and 1 was torso and head. The 5 of them actually formed an 8-meter-tall little giant. Ah! Is there such a martial skill? Xiang Nanqi asked. The little giant formed by the flood warriors stepped forward and used his fists to shoot out 2 rays of light towards the 5 flowers ghost. The so-called 2 fists were actually 2 strong warriors. These 2 rays of light were emitted by the 2 martial artists, but the Yuan Qi of the other 3 martial artists could actually be added to the 2 martial artists, increasing the Yuan Qi of the 2 martial artists by 3 times. A terrifying Yuan Qi light flew up against the ground, and even the harbor wind swept a deep chasm across the ground. Boom! Boom! The 2 strands of Yuan Qi struck the 5 flowers ghost and finally smashed it down from the treetop. We're going to retaliate. Azure Underworld Sect, go! And Xiao Hui ordered. However, when the 5 flowers ghost landed on the ground, it used both its hands and feet to support the ground, making it look like a leopard was going to pounce on the ground. Immediately after, the 5 flowers ghost turned into a black afterimage and instantly flew towards the flood warrior. Azure Underworld Heavenly Light. The 5 Azure Underworld sect martial practitioners jumped together and simultaneously used their Yuan Qi to condense a green barrier of Yuan Qi light. With a loud boom, the light shield enveloped the blue underworld sect and the martial practitioners of the flood stream. The light shield emitted a strong green light. It could be said to be extremely solid. The thickness of the light shield was a full meter. As for the 5 flower ghost, it quickly moved and smashed into the light shield, flattening the light shield. The light shield was originally hemispherical, but after the collision, it turned into an oval shape. The ghost squatted slightly and then jumped up with a whoosh. It turned into 7 or 8 afterimages, circling the entire light shield. Within a second, it had already rotated around the light shield for nearly 100 times. That strange speed caused a roaring gale to appear under the calm night sky. Xiang Nan and the others were lying 100 meters away from the battlefield. They were still blown away by the gale and kept gliding backwards. Looking at the azure light shield, the black bones on the elbows of the ghosts were riddled with holes, and numerous large cracks were formed to correct each other's mistakes. Boom! Finally, the azure light couldn't hold on and quickly collapsed into a patch of azure spots. Primordial Chaos Sect. Go! And Xiao Hui shouted. The moment the green light barrier was destroyed, the 4 Primordial Chaos Sect martial practitioners jumped up high and shot out rays of Yuan Qi towards the ghost that had just landed. 4 rays of Yuan Qi quickly wrapped around the ghost. Flood! And Xiao Hui shouted. The little giant formed by the flood warriors rumbled towards the monster and clasped his fists together, smashing them on the monster's head. This punch was so powerful that a large number of cracks appeared on the black shell of the ghost's head. Another punch, ha ha ha. The little flood giant laughed loudly and punched the ghost's head 3 times in a row. At this time, the outer shell of the ghost head shattered, revealing the real head inside. It was an illusory head made of black gas. End of flowers. And Xiao Hui shouted. The flower killer instantly disappeared and reappeared on the ghost's shoulder. The 5 of them simultaneously pierced through the ghost's head with their sharp lancets. The blade was stained with pollen. As the 5 of them split the lancet in 5 directions, the ghost's head exploded. Success! And Xiao Hui patted Xiang Nan on the shoulder and said, "The killing went smoothly this time. Without you, the spoils of war will not count as a single point for you." What? Xiang Nan simply couldn't believe his ears. "You told me not to make a move," he said. And Xiao Hui said, "I told you not to do anything, but you didn't do anything to kill the ghosts, did you?" Hee hee. Xiang Nan nodded and said, "All right, then you didn't do anything. Don't you have to share the spoils of war?" And Xiao Hui sneered, "I am the commander-in-chief. I not only want to get a share, I also want to get a maximum share. Stop talking nonsense. I have the final say here. If I say I won't give it to you, then I won't give it to you. If you have the ability and temper, you should leave now." Good job. Xiang Nan gave Xiao Hui a thumbs up. Thus, everyone surrounded the ghost corpse. And Xiao Hui took out a short saber and said, "Layer master of this layer has hidden all his cultivation techniques and martial skills in the body of the ghost. Let's see if this one has any." As he spoke, he pierced through the ghost's stomach with a short knife stained with pollen and ruthlessly opened it. Xiang Nan was already very curious about this situation, so he paid extra attention to it. He discovered that the moment the ghost's stomach was opened, its body cavity suddenly fell into a trance. The trance only happened in a blink of an eye, and it quickly regained its calm, as if it had never appeared before. Tisk, it's empty again. And Xiao Hui shook his head regretfully. Everyone else sighed in disappointment, but Xiang Nan was thoughtful. He took a few steps back and wiped his eyes with both of his hands. A ray of lightning immediately flashed through his pupils. He saw the strange life force fluctuations in the ghost blood. Moreover, there were some of these fluctuations in the sleeves of a flower killer. Yes. Xiang Nan's heart skipped a beat. There was clearly a book in the ghost's stomach, but it was quickly stolen by the flower killer in front of everyone and hid in his sleeve. And Xiao Hui glanced at the flower killer, but he quickly concealed it. Chapter 483. These people are cut from the same cloth. All right. And Xiao Hui clapped his hands, attracting everyone's attention, and said, since we don't have any martial skills, let's split the spoils. He used a short knife to pry off the hard outer shell of the ghost. These outer shells are very strong. Take them out and find a master artificer to refine them. They can be made into mid-grade earth-grade armor, he said. He casually tossed these shells to the people of the Primordial Chaos sect and the Azure Underworld sect. After that, he dug out the 2 black bone spikes of the ghost and said, these 2 bone spikes, together with other materials, can at least be refined into an earth-grade intermediate-grade weapon. As he said that, he threw one of the bone spurs to the Flood Warrior and the other to the Flower Killer. He said, as the Commander-in-Chief, I will set an example and try my best to leave all the good things to my hard-working teammates. Hearing this, everyone was very happy. Even the 3 disciples of the Haoran sect smiled. Although the Haoran sect disciples didn't even get a single hair, they didn't do anything. They still trusted in Xiao Hui in their hearts. However, Xiang Nan sneered and applauded, how selfless. I admire you, I admire you. Senior brother Xiu Yuan. Xiang Nan looked at Du Xiu Yuan and said, let's leave this team. Follow them and we won't get any benefits. Then Du Xiu Yuan hurriedly said, you can't say that. Everyone, work together and distribute spoils of war together. This is very fair. Although our Haoran sect has not obtained anything this time, as long as we continue to work hard, we will definitely gain something. Xiang Nan sighed and thought to himself, my good senior brother, you've been treated like a monkey, but you haven't figured out the situation yet. The flood of martial artists hugged their shoulders and shouted sternly, you didn't do anything after you came here, but now you've disturbed the morale of the army. I advise you to do what you like, and scram if you don't like it. Without him, no one will keep you. Xiang Nan. And Xiao Hui looked at Xiang Nan unkindly and said, you have to know how to speak properly. Do you understand? What do you mean by following us? You won't get any benefits at all. Who did I treat unfairly to? What? Xiang Nan's expression darkened as he said to Xiao Hui, do you really want to ask this question? Do you not regret it? Do you really want me to say it? And Xiao Hui's eyes twitched slightly as he said, if you have something to say, just say it. Don't be so gloomy here. All right. Xiang Nan nodded. This is your own death. You insisted on letting me say it. Let me be clear. As he said that, Xiang Nan pointed at the Flower Killer and said, you and the Flower Killer stole the martial skill in the stomach of the ghost just now. What do you say about this? What? Everyone was shocked and looked at the Flower Killer. On the other hand, Xiao Hui's expression changed slightly. He quickly recovered his original appearance and said, good boy, you actually learned to spout blood. Are you spouting blood? Xiang Nan sneered and immediately grabbed the Flower Killer's right hand. Doggall. The Flower Killer flipped his right hand and grabbed a willow blade, cutting towards Xiang Nan's wrist. Xiang Nan pointed at the killer's wrist with his left hand and pointed at his lancet. The Flower Killer's body shortened as he took the lancet with his left hand. The blade tilted upwards to pierce Xiang Nan's chin. Xiang Nan pointed at Mo Ku pointed 7 times in a row. 7 fire marks shot out, forcing the killer to take a few steps back. The killer's figure flashed and disappeared, appearing behind Xiang Nan. When his figure flashed, Xiang Nan's figure also flashed. Instead, he came behind the killer and kicked the killer to the ground. Then, he grabbed the killer's right shoulder and grabbed his arm. This brat refuses to help, yet he still wants to beat our people. Kill him. When Xiao Hui saw that things were about to be exposed, he was the first to rush forward to subdue Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan took another flash step and moved to the front of the killer. He raised his hand and kicked the killer's arm. A book flew out of his sleeve with a whoosh. Everyone was in an uproar. Flood Stream, Azure Underworld Sect, Primordial Chaos Sect, and the others were all furious. And Xiao Hui originally went to sneak attack Xiang Nan, but when he discovered that the matter was exposed, he followed the attack on Xiang Nan and directly pressed his right hand on top of the killer's head. He shouted, "How dare you! You actually dare to hide your martial skills." The assassin was stunned for a moment, then turned around and said, "You." Before you could say anything else, and Xiao Hui's palm exploded with Yuan Qi, and with a boom, the killer's head was shattered. And Xiao Hui. The other 4 killers were all shocked and said coldly, "And Xiao Hui." And Xiao Hui said with a cold face, "What, you stole the martial skill from me? Do you still want to reason with me?" At this time, everyone's anger was grafted onto the head of the flowers. The 4 assassins knew that they were speechless now. If they continued to argue, they would be attacked by the crowd. "Good, good, good." A flower killer gritted his teeth and said, "It was a traitor among us. We owe this debt to everyone. Next time, we will do more to make up for this mistake." And Xiao Hui nodded his head with a smile that was not a smile, as if he was very sensible. Xiang Nan did not expect that Xiao Hui would be so ruthless that he would be able to change his target in the blink of an eye and kill the killer who stole the martial skill on the spot. However, Xiang Nan did not have any conclusive evidence to prove that Xiao Hui was colluding with the people from the flowers. This Xiao Hui's mansion is extremely deep. He is definitely not a good type. Meng Dai whispered in Xiang Nan's ear. And Xiao Hui picked up the book and said sternly, "This is the first and last time. If anyone hides martial skills, don't blame me for being ruthless. This martial skill is something that everyone has obtained together. I will temporarily keep it here. After we have gathered enough books, everyone will slowly distribute it according to their innate attributes. Alright, it's almost time." And Xiao Hui silently calculated in his heart and said, "It took him half an hour to kill this 5 flowers ghost." He took out his compass and took a look. There's another 5 flowers ghost nearby. We can deal with him in about 20 minutes. We don't need to replenish the pollen for now. Now, let's continue on our journey. After he finished speaking, and Xiao Hui coldly looked at Xiang Nan and said, "You, continue to follow me. You are not allowed to act without my orders." As he said this, and Xiao Hui's eyes flashed with killing intent. These people are cut from the same cloth. Xiang Nan narrowed his eyes. This Xiao Hui was simply the same as Xiaoman. He was so shameless and vicious. Senior brother. Xiang Nan grabbed Du Xiuyuan's arm and said, "You saw what happened. Let's leave the team. Xiang Nan, with our strength, I'm afraid it will be very difficult for us to get past this level. I think it's better for us to stay with everyone," Du Xiuyuan said after pondering for a while. Xiang Nan was so angry that he lowered his voice and said, "Don't you understand? They clearly teased us together." Chapter 484 Xuanji. Du Xiuyuan hurriedly lowered his voice and whispered in Xiang Nan's ear, "Junior brother, didn't you see that they obtained a martial skill? It would be too disadvantageous for us to leave just like that." Xiang Nan frowned and said, "Senior brother, you've suffered a great loss because of greed. I think it's better to have some backbone and leave the team than to covet that martial skill. Hearing this, Du Shuyuan said with an unhappy expression, yes, you, Xiang Nan, caught up with the good times. You participated in the 12-sex joint examination and obtained an Earth-grade intermediate-grade martial skill. Furthermore, you were accepted as a direct disciple by the sect master. Naturally, you don't want to be with us. But where do we little people get martial skills? Right now, this is the only chance for us. How can I give it up? Hearing this, Xiang Nan nodded, all right, since senior brother has already said this, I have nothing to say. I will definitely not mix with those villains. I only advise senior brother to take care of yourself. Be careful of An Xiaohui. This person is quite scheming. Xiang Nan cupped his fists and cupped his hands, goodbye. Little Dai, let's go. After saying that, Xiang Nan brought Dream Butterfly and left without looking back. Du Shuyuan hurriedly said to Xiang Nan's back, hey, junior brother, that's not what I meant. Sigh. Yu Sheng and Chuiya exchanged a glance and could only sigh. Senior brother Xiu Yuan, what you said is a bit too much, Chuiya said. Yu Sheng said, I think what senior brother Xiu Yuan said is also correct. Xiang Nan has a good life. Of course, he can leave with dignity and no martial skills. How does he know how difficult it is for us to obtain a martial skill? In the distance, Meng Dai held Xiang Nan's arm and pouted, that senior brother of yours is so stingy and has no backbone. He knows that An Xiaohui is a scoundrel, but he still insists on licking his face and following behind him. Isn't that just looking for bad luck on his own? You kindly warned him. He still doesn't appreciate it. Forget it. Everyone has their own aspirations. We can't impose our own ideas on others. Xiang Nan shook his head. Xiang Nan thought for a moment and asked, Dream Butterfly, do you think we should go directly to the next floor or kill a few ghosts on this floor to try our luck? Killing ghosts is a trivial matter. Meng Dai muttered, I have a few doubts. I have to raise them. Help me analyze them. Speak, Xiang Nan nodded. Dream Butterfly said, the monsters on the first few floors all change their realms in proportion, don't they? The first few floors are all peculiar mushrooms to avoid danger, but this floor is a kind of pavilion. That's right. Xiang Nan said, I find it strange that you say that. The strength of the ghosts on this level will not change. Meng Dai continued, good brother, how many ways do you think you can get past this? Xiang Nan said thoughtfully, there are 2 ways to clear customs. One is to increase one's strength, and the other is to find a way to clear customs. Dream Butterfly said, however, all the monsters on this level have lost their martial skills. Even if they cultivate this kind of thing, the martial artist's own realm will not change much. If they encounter powerful ghosts, they will still die. So I think the main problem on this floor should be finding a way. The problem lies in those pavilions. That's right. Xiang Nan patted his forehead and said, so you're saying, let's find a pavilion to take a look. Let's go. Dream Butterfly became excited. If that's the case, then even if we're looking for it, we should start from the first pavilion. It's the place where we met Shenliang. Let's go, Xiang Nan said. Let's go back the same way. Previously, Xiang Nan had followed An Xiaohui and the others to search for the 5 flowers monster. They had taken a circuitous route, so the 2 of them weren't too far away from the first pavilion in a straight line. When the 2 of them returned to the first pavilion, the pavilion was still shining. The source of this light is very abnormal. Meng Dai supported her chin and said, the light from the pavilion does not come from Yuan Qi, nor does it come from the suppression of some powerful weapon. That might be something we don't know. Look for another power. The two of them searched the pavilion up and down, but they didn't find anything unusual. Am I wrong? Meng Dai's eyebrows knitted tightly. She really couldn't understand what was wrong. Perhaps, there is indeed something here, but it is hidden. Xiang Nan said, this pavilion is incomparably mysterious. If there is some kind of mystery in it, it may not be comprehensible to everyone. Therefore, only those who are fated can see it and avoid wasting their time if no one is lucky enough to comprehend it. The so-called fate did not refer to the true will of heaven or fate, but to their counterparts. For example, if there was a fire attribute martial skill hidden here, then other innate martial artists would be considered unlucky. Xiang Nan immediately cast his lightning photoelectric eyes and spied on the pavilion. He was surprised and said, indeed, there is something hidden. What did you see? Dream Butterfly hurriedly asked. Xiang Nan frowned, what I saw is not a kind of thing. I'll tell you from the most dazzling one first. Xiang Nan lightly jumped up to the highest point of the pavilion. He pointed at the tip of the pavilion and said, there is a very bright stone here, but I can't see what kind of material it is. This stone emits a sacred light. The light in the pavilion must have come from the stone. Come out and take a look. Dream Butterfly became excited. Xiang Nan reached out his hand to dig, but in the end, he could not dig anything down. He used the dragon blood saber to dig again, but he was still unable to damage the pavilion in the slightest. Even if he used the power of thunder and lightning, the sun god technique, the Mo Ku finger, and all sorts of other methods to try, he couldn't touch the stone. What exactly is this? Why does it feel like I've heard of this kind of thing before? Xiang Nan couldn't get it off, so he stared at the stone and thought. Let's not talk about that. You said you saw something else. What is it? Dream Butterfly was a little disappointed, but she still didn't give up. Oh. Xiang Nan loosened his grip and landed on the ground. He pointed at the 4 pillars and said, these 4 pillars are full of words. Read it. Meng Dai said. This seems to be some sort of incantation. Xiang Nan seemed to be deep in thought as he read out all the words on the 4 pillars. The 3 pillars in the southeast and west were indeed incantations, but the incantations of the 2 pillars in the southeast were completely different from the incantations on the west pillars. The north-facing pillar was the explanation for this pavilion. Xiang Nan said, there are a total of 36 pavilions here. The 36 pavilions are constructed from the golden body relic of a virtuous monk, forming a total of 36 heavenly astral places. In other words, these 36 pavilions have been set up into a formation called the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Array. The incantation on the pillars at the east and west ends corresponds to the star position of this pavilion. It is the Heavenly Ascendant. The incantation on the west pillar is a martial skill called the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Finger, which corresponds to the Heavenly Pivot Finger. Ah! Meng Dai was confused when she heard this and said, I don't quite understand what you said. Can you explain it carefully? Chapter 485 Heavenly Pivot Finger. Although Dream Butterfly was smart, her knowledge of martial arts was not as extensive as Xiang Nan's. Heavenly Dipper, Xiang Nan said, is a term used in the Profound Tao. The so-called Heavenly Dipper usually refers to the Heavenly Dipper Big Dipper. As for the so-called 7 stars, they refer to the Heavenly Pivot Star, the Heavenly Jade Star, the Heavenly Quan Star, the Yuheng Star, the Kaiyang Star, and the Yaoguang Star. So this Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Finger corresponds to the Heavenly Pivot Finger, Heavenly Jade Finger, and Heavenly Ji Finger. Meng Dieki said, there are only 7 Big Dipper stars. Why is there a saying that there are 36 stars? Can't we just build 7 pavilions? Xiang Nan said, the Big Dipper is only the 7 brightest stars we can see with the naked eye. According to the mysterious Tao, the Big Dipper is actually a cluster of stars. There are a total of 36 heavenly spirit stars hidden within this Big Dipper cluster. They are, Heavenly Heaven Star, Heavenly Spirit Star, Heavenly Secret Star, Heavenly Idol Star, Heavenly Bravery Star, Heavenly Mighty. Xiang Nan pointed at the pavilion and said, this pavilion corresponds to the Heavenly Arch Throne. The formation incantation here is also the method of setting up the Heavenly Arch Throne. Therefore, this pavilion is actually an array eye. According to the records above, the ghosts in hell were not only immortal, they were also invisible to the naked eye. That's why Senior has set up the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Array so that ghosts can be seen or killed. But as time goes by, after 100,000 years, the power of the 36 golden body relics in the 30 pavilions will gradually decline. At this point, Xiang Nan said, because of this recession, it is already very difficult for us to kill ghosts. We have to borrow the pollen of the Prometha flower. Perhaps in a few tens of thousands of years, the power of this Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Array will completely disappear. We won't even be able to see the existence of ghosts. Meng Dai said happily, then hurry up and learn the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Array and the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Finger. Xiang Nan said, this kind of formation and finger technique is only effective against demons and devils. It has no effect on ordinary creatures. Therefore, regardless of whether it's learning formations or cultivating finger techniques, you must be a person of great virtue. I'm afraid I won't be able to learn them. Meng Dai said, a person of great virtue can kill demons and eliminate devils. This is because the cultivation and temperament of a person of great virtue is specifically designed to suppress demons and devils. If you have a certain attribute to suppress demons and devils, you should be able to learn it as well. Xiang Nan pondered for a moment and said, the ghosts on this level are quite similar to the dark creatures my master mentioned. The Sun God technique was created to restrain those dark creatures. Perhaps what you said is really effective. Su Tsayue's mother was killed by an unknown dark creature. Her father had spent his entire life creating the Sun God technique for revenge. Although he didn't know if that dark creature was the same as the ghosts here, it should be one of the demons. At this moment, Xiang Nan first memorized the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Array and Heavenly Archemperor's incantation, and then went to cultivate the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Finger. The finger technique in this pavilion is the heavenly pivot finger of the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Finger. It means, exorcism. I don't know what this drive means. Practice first. As he spoke, Xiang Nan sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate according to the incantation. However, when he circulated his Yuan Qi in his meridians according to the incantation, there was no change. Xiang Nan muttered to himself, I am not an eminent Buddhist monk. Naturally, I am unable to condense a golden body relic in my body, but I have the Sun God technique. Perhaps I can accommodate it. As he spoke, he circulated the Sun God technique first. At this moment, a gentle sunlight descended from the top of the pavilion and enveloped Xiang Nan. This was the phenomenon of diverting light caused by revolving the Sun God technique. Afterwards, he began to circulate the heavenly pivot finger art. At this moment, a spoon-shaped Big Dipper phantom suddenly appeared in the sky behind Xiang Nan. Seeing this scene, Meng Dai immediately opened her mouth wide in shock, but did not dare to disturb Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan closed his eyes and continued to cultivate the heavenly pivot finger. This kind of finger technique was very complicated, and it was extremely difficult to cultivate. Even cultivating on the basis of Xiang Nan's divine talent was slow. He had spent an hour and was only at the initial stage of the incantation. No matter what, he could not reach the next step. Slowly, sweat appeared on Xiang Nan's forehead. Meng Dai also saw Xiang Nan's predicament and said, "Although this formation belongs to the mysterious Tao, do you think it is a Buddhist mysterious technique?" "Huh." Xiang Nan frowned slightly and said, "Perhaps." As he spoke, he circulated the Great Freedom Scripture again. When the Great Freedom Scripture circulated smoothly in his body, as expected, the heavenly pivot finger's incantation immediately became much easier. What a peculiar thing! Xiang Nan was speechless as he said, "To cultivate this finger technique, you actually need to simultaneously use the Sun God technique and the Great Freedom Scripture. I'm afraid this is also me. If it were anyone else, I would definitely not be able to learn it." At this moment, he was already cultivating the heavenly pivot finger much faster. In just half an hour, he had actually learned the entire heavenly pivot finger's finger technique. The moment he completed his technique, the Big Dipper phantom behind him, the first star on his spoon, actually lit up. Whoosh! Xiang Nan opened his eyes and said, "Success." Meng Dai happily clapped her hands and said, Quickly find a ghost and see what kind of effect this finger technique has. Come, let's go look around the broken city wall and see if there are any remaining stone statues or ghosts." Xiang Nan pulled the dream butterfly and ran all the way. The ghosts near the pavilion had all been killed by Xiang Nan with his Sun God technique, so he could only go back and look for them. The two of them arrived near the city wall and saw a stone sculpture on a section of the city wall. The stone sculpture had a premonition that humans were approaching, so it came alive. This time, Xiang Nan looked at the ghost's eyes and found that its pupils were made up of 3 petals. So this is the 3 flowers ghost. No wonder it's much weaker than the ghosts that Anshao Hui and the others attacked. Xiang Nan nodded. The ghost had already flapped its wings and flew high into the sky, then dived towards Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan took 2 steps back and blocked the dream butterfly behind him. Then, he circulated his heavenly pivot finger and pointed at the ghost. Behind him, a Big Dipper phantom appeared. The first Big Dipper star emitted a dazzling light. Xiang Nan used the power of the sun to activate the heavenly pivot finger. With a single finger, that finger force was made up of intense sunlight. The finger power of this finger was dazzling, and it instantly struck the ghost. Before the ghost could resist and struggle, it was bounced away with a whoosh sound, and turned into a small black dot. It disappeared at the junction of heaven and earth, flying out of the limits visible to the naked eye. Ah! Xiang Nan and Meng Dai were stunned at the same time. The two of them exchanged a glance. The dream butterfly said in disbelief, "Bounced away. Bounced so far." Xiang Nan was also shocked and said, "This time, the ghost was actually blown away without a trace." This is the expulsion that the heavenly pivot is referring to. So it means expulsion. Chapter 486 Heavenly Jade Finger. Huh, that's great. Meng Dai happily clapped her hands and cheered, so this heavenly pivot finger is so powerful. Then how much yuan qi does this finger technique consume? Xiang Nan's expression was strange as he said, "The strange thing is that the heavenly pivot finger doesn't consume much yuan qi. I feel that it consumes a little less yuan qi than Mo Ku's index finger." Wow! Dream Butterfly jumped onto Xiang Nan's body and said excitedly, "Great! In the future, if you encounter this kind of ghost again, just point and bounce it away. After it lands on the ground, it will definitely be dizzy. It may not even be able to find its way back. Xiang Nan was also very happy in his heart. To be able to discover the Heavenly Dipper Demon subduing array and the Heavenly Dipper Demon subduing finger this time was all thanks to Dream Butterfly. Then let's go find a second pavilion, Xiang Nan said. Meng Dai said, try the formation first. Set up a heavenly ascendant and take a look. Xiang Nan smiled and shook his head. The Heavenly Dipper Demon subduing array has a total of 36 array eyes. It is ineffective to set up only one array eye. Furthermore, to set up the Heavenly Dipper Demon subduing array, one must use the jade balance finger of the Heavenly Dipper Demon subduing finger. This is because the function represented by the jade balance finger is the formation dot. Meng Dai said, then there are a total of 36 pavilions here. How do we know which of the remaining 35 pavilions is ranked second? Xiang Nan used his Yuan Qi to draw a simple star map of the 36 heavenly spirit stars on the ground. The first pavilion is the Heavenly Ascendant Star, and the second pavilion is the Heavenly Spirit Star's Heavenly Spirit Star, so this is the second pavilion. Xiang Nan pointed at a star next to the Heavenly Stallion with his hand. Meng Dai kissed Xiang Nan on the face and said, my good brother knows so much. I don't even know about this. Xiang Nan wiped his face awkwardly and said, even I feel a little embarrassed to hear you praise me like this. It seems that reading more books is really useful. Knowledge is never out of date in any era. Xiang Nan was glad that he had so much time in his previous life to study the literature related to martial arts. Following that, the two of them found the second glowing pavilion according to the location of the star map. There were already hundreds of ghosts surrounding the pavilion, including the faceless girl, who was carrying a lantern. Outside the pavilion was a human skeleton that had been gnawed to the point that only half of its skeleton was left. Looks like some martial artists hid in this pavilion to avoid ghosts and monsters, but were confused by the cries of the faceless woman, so they walked out of the pavilion and were eaten. Get rid of them, Meng Dai said. The ghosts had already sensed the existence of the two of them, and from the vicinity of the pavilion, they rushed towards Xiang Nan in large numbers. Xiang Nan circulated his heavenly pivot finger, and a phantom image of the 7 stars formation diagram appeared behind him. Xiang Nan stepped forward and pointed his index finger at the ghosts. Under the light of a warm ray of sunlight, the fingers of sunlight crisscrossed and shot out densely. Once every ghost was hit by the heavenly pivot finger, it immediately flew out of the limit of its eyesight with a whoosh. Xiang Nan flicked more than 100 fingers and easily expelled all the ghosts. Ha! Meng Dai was so happy that she could not help but smile from ear to ear. This heavenly pivot finger is truly heaven-defying. Let's quickly go to the pavilion and take a look. When the two entered the pavilion, Xiang Nan looked for the incantation on the pillar with his lightning photoelectric eyes. However, he discovered that there were only incantations for formations in the pavilion, but no incantations for fingers. Xiang Nan said, there are only 7 finger techniques, and there are 36 pavilions. It seems that not every pavilion has a finger technique. It's good to remember the formation technique first. After remembering the Heavenly Dipper formation art, the two of them rushed towards the next heavenly secret formation eye. The two of them searched from pavilion to pavilion, and found the second finger technique of the Heavenly Dipper Demon subduing finger, the Heavenly Jade Finger, in the 6th star of the 36 heavenly stars, the Tianxiong star's array eye. So it's like this. Xiang Nan nodded and said, according to this sort of arrangement, there will be a finger technique found in every 5 pavilions. Then the next finger techniques should be hidden in the 5 planets, Tian Fu, Tian Yin, Tian Sha, Tian Jian, and Tian Jian. The heavenly jade finger in this pavilion has the function of locking. Practice, let's see how it works. Xiang Nan sat down cross-legged and spent more than half an hour cultivating his heavenly jade finger. After he finished cultivating, 2 stars lit up on his back, the first heavenly pivot star and the second heavenly jade star. Xiang Nan opened his eyes and said, according to the time, even if it was just dark when we arrived at this floor, it should be the evening of the next day. But the sky on this floor hasn't lit up, which means there's no day here. Hell, how can there be a time when dawn comes? Dream Butterfly was not interested in this and urged, quickly try what the heavenly pivot finger is for. The 2 of them ran towards the 7th pavilion. Halfway through, they encountered a ghost crawling out of the ground. This was a little ghost. It broke through the ground and held a fork in its hand. Xiang Nan circulated the Sun God technique and activated the heavenly jade finger. The Big Dipper phantom behind him, heavenly jade star, began to shine. With this finger, the light finger force struck the little ghost, but the ghost was immediately entangled by the finger force. This finger force turned into a light cord that tightly bound the ghost. The lower end of the light cord was like a tree root that crisscrossed and grabbed onto the ground. After the ghost was entangled, it struggled crazily, but it turned into an illusory state. Ah! Meng Dai said, lock, so it means lock. Xiang Nan walked forward thoughtfully and slashed down at the ghost. As a result, the giant saber pierced through the ghost, as if it had pierced through a shadow without any substance. It did not cause any damage to the ghost. Xiang Nan nodded and said, after the evil demon was locked up, it turned out to be unattacked. Then how long can it be locked? Meng Dai asked a crucial question. Xiang Nan carefully comprehended it and said, when it struggles, my yuan qi consumption starts to accelerate. It seems that there are only 2 ways for it to break through the heavenly jade finger. One is to slowly struggle until all of my essence is exhausted. The other method is that its own strength far surpasses mine, and it can directly shatter my finger power with its powerful strength. If it's the latter, as long as I'm still nearby, as long as my yuan qi hasn't been exhausted, it will never be able to break free. Meng Dai said, the Sun God technique itself restrains these things. If they want to shatter their finger power, I'm afraid it won't be that easy. They really have to be much stronger than you. Let's go to the next one. Xiang Nan said. Thus, the 2 of them continued to move forward. After finding the pavilion, they memorized the formation incantation. At the 11th pavilion, the Tian Fu star system, he found the finger seal of the Tian Ji finger. Chapter 487 Yuheng Finger. The heavenly dipper demon subduing finger had a total of 7 types of finger power, and the corresponding abilities of each type of finger power were also different. They are, heavenly pivot finger, Chu, heavenly jade finger, lock, heavenly Ji finger, hidden, heavenly Quan finger, Si, Yuheng finger, formation, Yang opening finger, crossing, and jade light finger, extinction. Xiang Nan learned the heavenly finger and found a ghost to experiment with. When a little ghost rushed towards Xiang Nan immediately used his heavenly finger. The moment his finger power erupted, Xiang Nan himself suddenly vanished. At this moment, Xiang Nan turned into a very hazy black shadow. At first glance, it looked like a human shadow on the ground, standing up. However, humans could see this state. The dream butterfly could clearly see Xiang Nan's existence, but what she saw was a black humanoid shadow. However, the little ghost stopped. It was clearly right in front of Xiang Nan, but it seemed to have suddenly lost its target. A small, bean-sized eye searched everywhere, but it couldn't see Xiang Nan in front of it. Ah! Invisibility? Meng Dai said happily, this heavenly finger can make you disappear in front of demons. However, after losing Xiang Nan's target, the little ghost rushed towards Dream Butterfly with a fork in his hand. Heavenly Jade Finger. Xiang Nan jumped out of the void and locked the little ghost in place with one finger. Meng Dai clapped her hands and said, then can you move your body after releasing your heavenly finger? Xiang Nan shook his head and said, no, I have to stand where I am. If I move my body, I will automatically walk out of invisibility. At that time, be careful. Xiang Nan's pupils constricted, and he suddenly saw a shadow surrounded by black gas pouncing towards the Dream Butterfly. Xiang Nan didn't even have time to think. He almost instinctively pushed the Dream Butterfly away with his left hand, and his right hand pointed at the dark and ghostly shadow with his heavenly pivot finger. In the time of the lightning and fire, Xiang Nan could clearly see the outline of the black gas shadow and was stunned. When the shadow was hit by the finger force, it was immediately ejected without a trace. Whoosh, what is it? Meng Dai was so scared that she only patted her chest. Xiang Nan said incredulously, then, that thing just now was actually Shu Yu. She's not dead yet? Dream Butterfly was also stunned, that stinking woman was shot down by you in the abyss of the undead. She was clearly pierced through by the undead, but she still survived. Yeah, it's really unbelievable. Xiang Nan lowered his head and looked at his fingers. However, what is even more strange is that Chu Yu is clearly a human, but my heavenly pivot finger can expel her. Could it be that because she used the heavenly Yin Fiend physique, she was deemed to be a demon in this state of escape? When Meng Dai heard this, she said angrily, you've done her a favor. You should have locked her up with your heavenly jade finger just now. Time is running out, there's no time to think. Xiang Nan frowned and said, I didn't expect this woman to be alive. It's really hard to deal with. But since that's the case, we have to seize the time. Otherwise, once she finds Shao Hui and the others, she will expose our situation. After Xiang Nan killed Shao Hui and Shen Liang's younger brothers, the two of them would definitely come to seek revenge on Xiang Nan. Let's go. Hurry up and learn all the incantations in the pavilion. After that, hurry up and leave this floor. I'm afraid that Dong Wushang and the others will be coming in soon. Dream Butterfly urged. Xiang Nan picked her up and immediately ran towards the next pavilion. At the 17th pavilion, they discovered the incantation of the heavenly power finger. After learning this kind of finger technique, he discovered that it was an eye-opening finger technique. Once he used the heavenly finger, the finger force would automatically return to his eyes along his arms, causing Xiang Nan's pair of eyes to turn completely black. At first glance, Xiang Nan's eyes were two bottomless void states. There were no white eyeballs, no black eyeballs, and no pupils. However, the world Xiang Nan saw was different. The world he saw had turned into a blurry state. It was very similar to the outline of the real world, but there were some other things. Ghosts Xiang Nan took 2 steps back and stared at the ground with a serious expression. What? Meng Dai was so frightened that she jumped into Xiang Nan's embrace. Xiang Nan pointed to the ground and said, there are ghosts and souls crawling everywhere on this ground. There are also ghosts and souls beneath our feet. But these ghosts and souls don't seem to be conscious, nor do they affect humans. Is this called the Yin-Yang Eye? Meng Dieki said. I don't know, Xiang Nan shook his head. Anyway, this heavenly power finger is different from my lightning photoelectric eye. Lei Liangguang's eyes can see spiritual things, while the heavenly power finger shows me dark things. The opposite is true. Let's go. Continue. When Meng Dai heard Xiang Nan's explanation, she was no longer afraid. The two of them found Yu Hengji in the 22nd pavilion. After he finished cultivating, he discovered that this kind of finger power was used to set up the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Array. Xiang Nan had already learned 23 star formation incantations. He tentatively used the Jade Balance finger to set up the formation. As soon as he used his finger technique, his fingers immediately flashed with a dazzling light. Heavenly Arch. Xiang Nan soared into the air and pointed at the ground. With a whoosh, the finger force shot into the ground and turned into a shining star. Heavenly Dipper Realm. He pointed at the heavenly astral plane in mid-air, and the power of his finger landed on the ground and turned into stars, landing on the heavenly astral plane. Tian Ji, Tian Xian, Tian Yong. He pointed out Yu Heng's finger again and again, and numerous stars appeared on the ground. A total of 22 array holes were set up. However, there were less than 36 eyes in this array, and they were still unable to form the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Array. This is truly amazing. Meng Dai said, "We have already gathered 22 stars. We are still 14 stars away from perfection. As for the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Finger, only the last Yang Opening Finger and the Jade Light Finger are left. The Yang Opening Finger should mean transcendence. The Jade Light Finger should mean annihilation. It should mean killing. The two most powerful finger techniques of the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Finger must be learned at the end." Xiang Nan nodded, "Let's go. We need to be careful next." The 36 pavilions were arranged in the spirit formation of the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Array. The further they went, the deeper they would go into the dangerous zone of hell. When the two of them arrived at the 23rd pavilion, they suddenly discovered that in the wilderness on the right side of the path, there was a person with an incomparably smooth figure, but with his head lowered motionlessly. 5 Flowers Ghost. Meng Dai grabbed Xiang Nan's arm. "Shoo, don't make a sound." Xiang Nan lowered his voice and pressed the dream butterfly to the ground. This 5 Flowers ghost was exactly the same as the one in Xiao Hui and the others had killed. Such a powerful ghost could only be killed with the perfect cooperation of dozens of top experts at the 7th level of origin return. Nowadays, Xiang Nan and the other two were weak on their own, so they were naturally extremely cautious when encountering such a thing. Fortunately, the 5 Flowers ghost didn't die, but it turned around and saw Xiang Nan and Dream Butterfly. Chapter 488 Sees a House. Shit! Xiang Nan's heart skipped a beat. Isn't this kind of 5 Flowers ghost not going to attack easily? The last time a large number of experts surrounded the 5 Flowers ghost, it did not show any unusual aggressiveness. But this time, the 5 Flowers ghost would actually take the initiative to search for the enemy. It's injured. Dream Butterfly's sharp eyes, coupled with the short distance, immediately discovered the problem. Sure enough, Xiang Nan took a closer look. There were really numerous small incisions on the body of the 5 Flowers ghost. The most serious was the ghost's left arm. For some reason, half of the black bone on its left arm's elbow had been broken. Could it be in Xiao Hui and the others did it? But if they did it, why didn't they kill this thing? Xiang Nan's heart grew heavy. Within Xiao Hui's personality, how could he let the 5 Flowers ghost monster stand in front of him and give up halfway? Could it be that something unexpected happened during the battle? They had no choice but to flee, but what kind of accident could scare away 30 or so top experts? "It's coming!" Dream Butterfly shrank her neck. The 5 Flowers ghost had already bent over and made a sprint towards Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan was also ready to fight at any time. As long as the Five Flowers ghost entered his attack range, he would not hesitate to attack. After a short confrontation, the Five Flowers ghost unsurprisingly turned into an afterimage and rushed towards Xiang Nan. Heavenly Pivot Finger. Xiang Nan pointed out, and the Sunshine Finger instantly hit the Five Flowers ghost, bouncing it away. But this time, the effect of the Heavenly Pivot Finger was not as shocking as before. The Five Flower ghost had only been bounced 1,000 meters away before stopping. Once it landed on the ground, it quickly pounced towards Xiang Nan. Not good, this thing's strength is too strong. I can't expel it too far away. Xiang Nan pointed at the Five Flowers ghost that rushed over and released another Heavenly Jade Finger. This monster could even break through the Azure Light Shield condensed by the 5 experts of the Azure Underworld sect. This showed just how frightening its strength was. After Xiang Nan's Heavenly Jade Finger hit the monster, it immediately turned into a light cord and locked it in place. The end of the light cord went deep into the ground, and the roots intertwined to grab onto the ground. The monster began to struggle crazily, continuously stretching the light cord, and the light cord connected to the root of the ground was also constantly rising. It's going to break. Xiang Nan gritted his teeth and a Buddha standing phantom appeared on his body. The moment the ghost broke free from the light chains, Xiang Nan pointed out, Phaseless Tribulation Finger. The black finger force instantly struck the ghost, lowering Xiang Nan's cultivation level by half to the mid-4th level of the Origin Reversion Realm, while the ghost's strength greatly weakened. Xiang Nan took advantage of the unstable body of the ghost and used his Heavenly Jade Finger to lock it in place. This time, the ghost's struggles were much weaker, and it was unable to break free from the shackles of the light chains. Xiang Nan took advantage of the victory and chased after him. Holding a huge saber in his hand, he made a big leap and landed on the ghost slash. He shouted, "Open!" "Who?" At the same time that the giant saber landed, the finger power that Tianwan pointed at dissipated. The ghost instantly regained its mobility and quickly retreated at the same time as the giant saber landed. Xiang Nan slashed through the air with his saber, and when he landed, he slashed upwards with his saber. A flaming saber light shot towards the ghost. The ghost's strength decreased, and its speed also decreased. Then, it was sliced heavily on its chest by the fire mark saber light. Xiang Nan did not wait foolishly. When he chopped out the first strike of the Yang Flame Saber technique, the second strike followed closely behind. An even more powerful Azure Flame Saber light chased after him. The ghost was struck by the first saber, and then it was struck by the second saber. The black shell on its body was sliced into pieces. Xiang Nan's third strike was the third move of the Yang Flame Saber technique. A blazing saber light flew towards the ground at an inclined angle. Countless withered grass had been cut to pieces, and broken grass scraps flew everywhere in the sky, while the powerful Yang Flame Blade light struck the ghost's body. Almost at the same time, Xiang Nan's gaze suddenly turned upwards and he shouted, F***CK. What the hell? In the sky above the Five Flowers ghost, there was actually a huge black shadow floating in the night sky. The shadow was completely made up of black gas. At first glance, it looked like a giant bat with its wings spread out. Its body also looked like a human, and it had a woman's face. However, the expression on its face was too distorted. It was simply not something a human could make. This thing didn't have a lower half of its body, and black gas continuously dripped down from its entire body. She quietly floated there, silent, her pair of eyes emitting a faint green light. When Xiang Nan slashed at the Five Flowers ghost, he accidentally saw her existence. All of this happened too quickly. When Xiang Nan's saber light split the 5 flowers ghost in half, the woman in the sky let out an ear-piercing scream. She turned into a black line and instantly hit Xiang Nan. In that instant, Xiang Nan felt his soul being knocked out of his body by her. Xiang Nan's soul was actually knocked out of his body, and he rarely saw his back. Shit! Xiang Nan was dumbfounded. At that moment, time seemed to have slowed down. He saw himself slowly floating away from his physical body, while the woman occupied his physical body. She was turning around and smiling sinisterly at him. On the other hand, Xiang Nan's physical face began to distort. His eyes turned pure black. On the skin at the corners of his eyes, spider web-like black lines began to appear at both ends. The lines continued to pass through his temples. F***CK, seize the house. This damn thing can actually seize the house. Sun-quenching. Xiang Nan was hit by her chest, and the upper half of her soul was the first to be sent flying from her body. If Xiang Nan's soul completely left her body, she would lose control of her body. Just as his entire upper body floated out, leaving behind only his last 2 legs, which were rapidly flying away from his fleshly body, he immediately released the quenching sun. Boom! A fierce sunlight descended from the sky. In the boundless night sky, it was so resplendent. Inside Xiang Nan's body, the woman let out an earth-shattering scream. This scream was so shrill that even the surrounding withered grass was shattered into powder. Zha! The woman was blasted out of her body. Xiang Nan's soul instantly returned to his body. However, just as the woman was blasted out by the sun, she quickly changed her target and collided with the dream butterfly. Ah! Xiang Nan angrily raised his saber and was about to slash down, but his blade suddenly hung above Dream Butterfly's head. That was the Dream Butterfly. If this saber landed, it would probably chop the Dream Butterfly to death. At this time, Dream Butterfly suddenly shook. Her eyes turned pure black, and the corners of her eyes quickly filled with black lines. She revealed an unprecedented strange smile. Her entire face twisted, and her long hair danced wildly in the wind. Large patches of black gas kept falling from her black hair. Xiang Nan hugged the Dream Butterfly and enveloped the Dream Butterfly with the sun-quenching light. However, Meng Dai was not the one who triggered the sun-quenching. She could not enjoy Xiang Nan's core strength after the sun-quenching. Even though the sunlight shrouded her, her body was constantly being burned by the sunlight, emitting even more black gas. Pine. Dream Butterfly didn't know where the power came from, but her palm struck Xiang Nan's chest, sending Xiang Nan flying and spitting out a large mouthful of blood. Chapter 489 Blade Light illuminates the way ahead. Jie jie jie. The Dream Butterfly let out a creepy laugh. She raised her hands. Her 2 hands were filled with black gas. 10 beautiful, sparkling fingernails had now become dry and long, turning into 10 sharp claws. Xiang Nan was blasted backwards for more than 10 meters. After landing, he immediately jumped up. As for the Dream Butterfly, it had already pounced towards him, and its sharp claws were emitting black gas, about to break through Xiang Nan's sky lid. Get out of here! Xiang Nan roared angrily. He pointed at the Dream Butterfly with his heavenly jade finger. Her finger power turned into a light cord and locked Dream Butterfly halfway. However, the female ghost's strength far exceeded the 5 flowers ghosts. One could see that 2 bright silver pupils had slowly appeared in Dream Butterfly's pair of pure black eyes. And these 2 pupils were 6 flowers. The dream butterfly immediately broke free from the light cord and continued to pounce towards Xiang Nan. Phaseless Tribulation Finger. Xiang Nan took 3 steps back and put on another finger. When the black finger hit the dream butterfly, she suddenly screamed. Finally, a terrified expression appeared on her face, and she turned around and flew into the distance. Xiang Nan sprinted wildly in the direction of the dream butterfly. Leave her behind for me. However, the dream butterfly didn't even turn its head back. Instead, it sprinkled a strange sneer and flew farther and farther away. Xiang Nan could not catch up with the dream butterfly at all. He had only run for less than 10 seconds before he lost track of the dream butterfly. Ah! Xiang Nan was furious. He knelt on the ground and punched the ground, causing the land to rumble. Large amounts of soil were blown out and surged into the sky. He gritted his teeth and said angrily, "Good, good. I swore that I would protect Dream Butterfly." He poured his Yuan Qi into his throat and roared, "I'll give you an hour to send the Dream Butterfly back. Otherwise, even if it's the world of slaughtering light, I would not hesitate." The roar covered the sky and spread in all directions, but there was no response. The veins on Xiang Nan's forehead bulged out. He gritted his teeth and immediately rushed towards the next pavilion. This time, he was running with all his might. The lightning on his body exploded as he dragged a long tail of lightning and sprinted to the limit. Even the withered grass on the road was turned into powder by the lightning. He rushed through several pavilions in a row, found the Yang opening finger, and used half an hour to learn the power of his fingers. Then, he continued to run wildly to the next pavilion. Halfway through, he encountered another 5 flowers ghost. The ghost immediately rushed forward after discovering the intense lightning fluctuations on Xiang Nan's body. Get lost! Phaseless Tribulation Finger. A black finger force struck the 5 flowers ghost. Yang opening finger. The heavenly dipper demon subduing finger released its 6th finger, and the sunlight finger hit the ghost, immediately binding the ghost to the spot. The Yang opening finger actually had the effect of the heavenly jade finger. It could first trap the evil demons, but the Yang opening finger's state was very similar to Mo Ku's thumb power, because the Yang opening finger's finger power was continuous. The Yang opening finger continuously shot towards the 5 flowers ghost and used the transcendence method to continuously transform its body into black gas. In just 10 seconds, the ghost had been completely burned into black gas. Large amounts of black gas floated into the sky, and along with a gust of wind, it was blown away. He didn't even look at the ghost, and didn't even care if there was some kind of martial technique on its body. There was only one thought in his mind at this moment: save the dream butterfly. Save her at all costs. At the next pavilion, he quickly memorized the incantation and continued to run wildly. Halfway to the next pavilion, he suddenly met Xiao Hui and the others. These people were all injured and were trekking in a sorry state in the wilderness. "It's Xiang Nan." Someone suddenly noticed Xiang Nan running over. "Xiang Nan, return my younger brother's life." And Xiao Hui suddenly went berserk. At this moment, Shen Liang had also returned from the crowd. Shen Liang jumped into the air and slashed his sword at Xiang Nan. "You killed my younger brother Shen Ming. I want you to pay with your blood. Get lost." Xiang Nan's footsteps didn't stop. He jumped into the air and shouted, "Dragon subduing slash." Xiang Nan really lost control this time. He had already given up everything. As long as he could drive away those who were blocking his way, he didn't care about anything anymore. The dragon subduing slash had evolved from the Prajna palm. It was a terrifying power that could directly increase Xiang Nan's martial skill damage to the 8th level of origin return. Releasing the dragon subduing slash would also cause Xiang Nan to suffer a huge backlash. At that moment, an astonishing amount of Yuan Qi condensed above Xiang Nan's head, a 50-meter-long saber light. There were dense scriptures on the surface of the blade light, and there were 2 Qi dragons circling around the blade light. Damn it, what kind of martial skill is that? All of a sudden, everyone was stunned. The other martial artists of the Heavenly Desolation calendar, including the Flower Killer and the Flood Warrior, were already prepared to attack. Only the Primordial Chaos Sect, the Azure Underworld Sect, and the Haran Sect didn't have time to react. However, when Xiang Nan's saber landed, everyone could feel the destructive power of the saber light on the origin returning martial cultivator. The flower-filled assassin immediately fled to both sides, and the martial artists of the Flood Stream and the Heavenly Desolation calendar were also running wildly. Get out of the way! Shenliang was in midair, and there was no room to dodge. On the other hand, An Shao Hui directly released a palm strike and used an offensive martial skill to hit Shenliang. The palm strike sent Shenliang flying and spat out a large mouthful of blood. His injuries had already injured his internal organs. However, this kind of injury was worth it compared to the death cost of being struck by the saber light. The terrifying dragon subduing slash finally landed. This saber strike was dodged by all of the experts. However, the explosive aura created by the saber strike engulfed everyone in a frenzy. All the martial artists were engulfed by the waves of qi. The sharp fragments of Yuan Qi caused their fleeing bodies to instantly become unbalanced. All of them were shaken to the point of dizziness, bleeding from their orifices, and only a buzzing sound could be heard in their ears. Pooh! Xiang Nan spat out a large mouthful of blood into the sky and turned into a mist of blood. But he didn't stop. He spat out blood from among the martial artists who were sent flying. His eyes looked straight ahead, and there was only the next pavilion in his eyes. After he ran over, the wilderness was filled with miserable screams. A large number of martial artists were injured by the Yuan Qi Berserk Wolf, and they all lay on the ground vomiting blood. In fact, a strong man who didn't escape in time was crushed by the saber light on the spot. Xiang Nan was running, covering his spiritual sea while spitting out blood, still running wildly. If at this time, some of the less injured martial artists started to chase after Xiang Nan. With Xiang Nan's current severely injured body, it was likely that he would be doomed. However, they were all intimidated by the might of that saber strike, and none of them dared to chase after Xiang Nan despite the storm. After a while, An Shao Hui got up from the ground and said with difficulty, "Damn it, this little bastard saber light is too terrifying." However, he seems to have been bounced back by the power of the saber light. Everyone, don't be afraid. Go chase after him. Chapter 490 Sprint. But, where did he go? Someone asked. Du Shuyuan exchanged glances with the other 2 martial brothers and said, "If I want to kill Xiang Nan, I will definitely not go with you. Those who don't help me kill Xiang Nan will all die." An Shao Hui roared out of control. Shenliang also unfurled his sword and gritted his teeth. "Everyone, help. It's impossible." The people from the Primordial Chaos Sect and the Azure Underworld Sect all stood on Du Shuyuan's side. They belonged to one of the 8 great sections. Regardless of whether there were conflicts or not, they were naturally standing together with the martial artists of their own era in this kind of place. "We don't want to get involved in this mess." The Flower Killer exchanged glances with the torrent of martial artists. Then, he hugged his shoulders and stood to the side, choosing to remain neutral. The flower killer had long since complained about An Shao Hui's previous actions. However, due to An Shao Hui's tricks, he didn't dare to say anything else. In this way, only the three sects of the Heavenly Desolation calendar would dare to kill Xiang Nan. An Shao Hui and Shen Liang each led a sect team. After weighing the pros and cons, the other team from the Heavenly Desolation calendar chose to chase after Xiang Nan together with An Shao Hui. An Shao Hui took out 3 books of martial skills and said, "These 3 books are all mid-grade earth-grade martial skills. Also, don't forget that these martial skills came from 100,000 years ago." To the Heavenly Desolation calendar, this place belonged to 100,000 years ago, but to Wu Yuan, this place belonged to 180,000 years ago. As long as you are willing to help me hunt down Xiang Nan, I am willing to share these 3 martial skills with all of you. Hearing this, the martial artists of the martial origin calendar immediately wavered. "I'll join." The flower-filled assassin immediately expressed his stance. Immediately afterwards, the martial practitioners of the Flood Stream, Primordial Chaos Sect, and Azure Underworld Sect also chose to join the pursuit of Xiang Nan. This was the cruelty of reality. There were no eternal enemies and no eternal friends. As long as there was enough temptation, the alliance's balance would tilt. Du Shuyuan and Cui Ye were also tempted. However, no matter what, it was impossible for them to help others kill their fellow disciples. Capture the 3 of them. With them here, I don't believe Xiang Nan will escape from this floor. An Shao Hui said angrily. The 3 killers immediately disappeared. When they reappeared, they already had a lancet placed on Du Shuyuan's neck. "You guys." Du Shuyuan was furious. "We were teammates who fought together." An Shao Hui said angrily, "What bullshit teammate is not as important as my younger brother's hatred in front of me." Du Shuyuan regretted not listening to Xiang Nan's advice. This scene was incomparably ironic and helpless. At the same time, this was also the sorrow of that nobody. Xiang Nan could let go, but Du Shuyuan and the others could not. They would rather take risks than give up those so-called martial skills. It was because they did not possess such outstanding talent as Xiang Nan, nor did they possess such enviable fortune as Xiang Nan. Facing this, Du Shuyuan and the others could only turn their anger into a powerless sigh in their hearts. "Tie them up and take them away." With An Shao Hui's order, someone immediately tied up the 3 Haran sect martial practitioners. The warriors of the Primordial Chaos Sect and the Azure Underworld Sect only looked at Du Shuyuan apologetically, but no one regretted it. In the distance, Xiang Nan was still barging into pavilions after pavilions. By the time he reached the Heavenly Prison Star System, the 32nd pavilion had already entered a vast sea of flames. Looking around, it was an endless sea of flames. Within this sea of flames, there were countless undead screaming miserably, suffering from the torment of the sea of flames. The 32nd pavilion was in the depths of the sea of flames. It stood alone amidst the boundless flames, emitting a wisp of holy light. Upon seeing the holy light, Xiang Nan thought of the pendant and the dream butterfly. The pendant was also unable to stop the 6 flowers monster from seizing its possession. Once he thought of the possibility that he would never see the dream butterfly again, Xiang Nan felt a heart-wrenching comprehension. "No, it doesn't matter. I won't lose her." Xiang Nan leapt into the flames and ran wildly through the burning flames. He circulated the 9 purities cosmos skill to resist the flames and at the same time recover from his internal injuries. That 6 flowers ghost has taken away Dream Butterfly's body. She won't destroy Dream Butterfly. It must be so. Xiang Nan kept comforting himself. At this moment, in the sea of flames ahead, a huge arm suddenly soared into the sky. When the flaming arm reached the highest point, it slammed down with a loud boom. Immediately after, another arm stretched out and slammed heavily onto the ground. After that, two arms propped up the ground, and a two-horned flame ghost crawled out of the sea of flames. The ghost's entire body was made up of flames. Its two eyes were two huge fireballs, and its mouth was more like a crack in the earth that flowed with rolling magma. Walala! Strange chains were still wrapped around the ghost's body, and when its enormous right leg was lifted off the ground, it caused the chains to rumble. Its pupils were 6 flowers. Roar! Before the ghost's entire body could leave the ground, it let out a roar at Xiang Nan. The roar turned into rolling flames and swept towards Xiang Nan. The temperature of the flames it spat out was simply too high. As soon as the flames came out, the boundless sea of flames lowered its head. The sea of flames was suppressed by 2/3, and all of them were stuck to the ground, as if they were kneeling before a superior. Xiang Nan's heart trembled. Before the flames of the 6 flowers monster could reach his face, his body had already started to burn due to the extremely high temperature. The indescribable burning pain immediately engulfed Xiang Nan, depriving him of all his sensory abilities. The only thing left was pain. Phaseless tribulation finger. Xiang Nan raised his hand and pointed. The black finger force struck the flaming ghost, and the ghost's body instantly shrank by 1/5. At the same time, Xiang Nan also used his Yuan Qi to condense a shield, and the 9 purities cosmos skill also circulated to its limit. The moment the Yuan Qi shield touched the flames, it only lasted for less than 2 seconds before it was burnt to ashes. As for the slightly weakened flames that swallowed Xiang Nan, they were partly resisted by the extremely high flame resistance of the 9 purities cosmos skill. Even so, Xiang Nan's entire body was still burned dry, and a large number of cracked wounds appeared. Before the fresh blood could flow out, it was evaporated by the high temperature. It was only because this mouthful of flames was spat out by the monster before it was hit by the phaseless tribulation finger. Ah! Xiang Nan roared in pain as he pulled out his saber with his right hand and soared into the air. A ray of yang flame saber light shot out. The blade light pierced into the flame monster's chest with a puff. However, the flame monster's body was too large. To it, this saber wound was not fatal. It was only sliced into large amounts of boiling lava from the wound. After the magma landed on the ground, it actually turned into tiny flaming ghosts, all of them crawling up from the ground. Chapter 491 Helplessness. Xiang Nan did not entangle himself with the 6 flowers pupil flame ghost. He did not have the time or mood to do so. Instead, he jumped past it and directly jumped into the 32nd pavilion. As soon as he entered the pavilion, Xiang Nan didn't even care about his injuries, so he began to learn the 7th finger of the Heavenly Dipper Demon subduing finger, the Jade Light finger. The pavilion was already very large, and its diameter was almost over 100 meters. The flaming ghost brought more small flaming ghosts and surrounded the pavilion, constantly roaring at Xiang Nan inside. Xiang Nan turned a deaf ear and endured the burning pain of his body as he silently cultivated the Jade Light finger. At this time, the sea of flames outside was not calm. Apart from the giant flame monster, there were many other flame monsters churning in the sea of flames. There were plenty of monsters with python-like bodies, and there were some that were burned all over, leaving only half of their bodies as human-like monsters. All of a sudden, the pavilion was surrounded by devil dancing. Xiang Nan didn't even open his eyes for a moment, only cultivating quietly. Very quickly, half an hour later, the Big Dipper phantom behind him lit up the last star. At this time, Xiang Nan finally stood up. He took a deep breath and pointed at the flaming ghost, shouting, "Jade Light Finger." The last finger of the Heavenly Dipper demon subduing finger was extremely tyrannical. The power of the flameless tribulation finger on the flame ghost had long since disappeared, but now that it had been struck by the Jade Light Finger, a huge piercing wound had actually appeared on its chest. Roar! The flaming ghost howled miserably towards the sky. Phaseless tribulation finger. Xiang Nan struck it with a black finger, followed by a jade finger. The flame ghost's strength was weakened. Now that it was struck by Yao Guang's finger, it was no longer a piercing wound. Instead, the entire peng exploded on the spot. Large amounts of magma sprayed into the sky. The magma rained down like rain, landing on the surrounding 3 flower ghosts, directly burning them to death on the spot. Unfortunately, after the 6 flowers ghost died, it didn't leave any martial skills behind for Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan was not in the mood to look, but immediately ran towards the 33rd pavilion. Along the way, a large number of ghosts that hadn't been burned to death in the sea of flames still wanted to surround Xiang Nan. As Xiang Nan ran wildly, he quickly released his heavenly pivot finger. That finger force crisscrossed and wildly shot towards the north, south, east, and west directions. They saw ghosts being bounced away, bouncing away again and again. They all turned into tiny dots of flame light and disappeared into the world. In this sea of flames, Xiang Nan kept running, constantly using the heavenly pivot to point at all the ghosts blocking the way. In the following period of time, he found the 33rd, 34th, and 35th pavilions. Xiang Nan had already learned all 7 finger techniques of the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Finger, and the last thing left was the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Array. Only by learning the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Array could all ghosts become visible to the naked eye, and could even be killed by ordinary attacks. The young opening finger was a transcendent ghost. It took too long to release, but the Jade Light Finger could directly shatter ghosts, but it consumed too much Yuan Qi. After Xiang Nan ran out of the Sea of Fire, he saw the 36th pavilion. However, on the path that the pavilion had to take, there was a ghostly bridge. Beneath this bridge was a black river that surged past, and the width of the black river had already exceeded 10 kilometers. It was impossible for Xiang Nan to jump over such a wide river no matter what. On the side of the bridge, there were 2 ancient and unadorned characters made of relief. There was an endless feeling of vicissitudes on the characters. What can I do? Xiang Nan was stunned. He gritted his teeth and began to walk towards the bridge. When he stepped on the bridge, the memories in his mind diminished a little. When he took the 2nd step, the 3rd step, the 4th step. Every step he took, the memories of the dream butterfly in his mind diminished a little. When he reached the middle of the bridge, he could not even remember Meng Dai's face, nor could he remember Meng Dai's identity. However, deep down in his heart, there was a person he was worried about. That person's appearance and figure became even more blurry. However, when he reached this point, the worries in his heart also disappeared along with his memories. He suddenly didn't know why he wanted to cross the bridge, why he wanted to turn around. This feeling of losing one's memories of someone was terrifying, because there was no concern, so there was no obsession, so he forgot where the thing he was fighting for was. He had even begun to relax, and there was a faint sense of pleasure in his mind. As long as I cross this bridge, I can go to the next spacetime zone. He smiled, but his smiling face was already covered in tears. He stopped and scratched his face with his fingers. Looking at the tears on his fingers, he wondered, why would I cry? But for no reason, his tears suddenly went out of control, and large drops rolled down. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his heart. He felt that there was a woman's back imprinted in the depths of his soul. Who is she? Why does my heart hurt so much when I think of her? Xiang Nan wiped his face hard, but his tears couldn't stop. In the middle of the bridge stood a woman. The woman smiled and waved at Xiang Nan. Let's go. Once we go, we can forget all the troubles and start over again. Xiang Nan looked at the woman in disappointment and blankly said, I don't want to go over. The woman smiled. Why? What else can't you let go of? I don't know. Xiang Nan almost forgot why he was here. He remembered his identity and knew that this was the Devil Sea. He even knew that Dong Wushang was chasing him, and even in Xiao Hui and the others were very clear about their existence. However, there was only one person missing, and that person's memories were rapidly fading away. No. Xiang Nan suddenly took a step back and said, No. No way. He raised his finger and was about to attack the woman. However, that woman had a calm smile on her face, and her pupils were 9 flowers. Xiang Nan gritted his teeth and roared, What did you take from my memory? The woman smiled and said, I didn't take anything from you. You gave it up on your own initiative. What do you believe and what don't you believe? You must have forgotten something that even you wouldn't believe. What do I not believe? Xiang Nan muttered to himself, I don't believe in love. As soon as the fading figure in his mind became clear again, Xiang Nan felt a severe headache, and the figure of that person began to fade away. The woman smiled and said, I will not take away the memories of hatred, nor will I take away the memories of happiness. I will only take a bit of your sadness and turn it into the river under the bridge. Look, no matter how wide this river is, there are many people who have left their emotional wounds here. Let me ask you, why are you holding on to what you should forget? Xiang Nan took another step back. After he took this step back, a hallucination suddenly appeared beside his ear, and a woman whispered softly, Good brother. Boom! Xiang Nan's mind suddenly exploded. Chapter 492 Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Formation. Xiang Nan gritted his teeth. He pointed his index finger at the woman and said, Give me back what you took from me. The woman asked again, Why? Xiang Nan said angrily, Whether it's good memories or bad memories, they belong to me. I don't want to forget them. Even if it's pain or sorrow, I won't let it go. Why are you so persistent? The smile on the woman's face disappeared. That's how persistent I am. Xiang Nan roared at the top of his voice, This daddy has been a person for 2 generations. Pain and hatred have ruined my life. In my entire life, there is only a tiny bit of kindness left for me to think about. If I am willing to abandon even this little kindness, then what is the point of my life? The woman sighed and said, Don't say that I didn't help you. It was you who refused to let go of yourself. If you were willing to live in pain, it would be your fault. With that, the woman waved her hand and a wave suddenly disappeared from the river, turning into a shadow and shooting between Xiang Nan's eyebrows. In an instant, all of Xiang Nan's memories were restored. He suddenly remembered the dream butterfly. The time he had forgotten about dream butterfly made Xiang Nan feel incomparably scared. Fortunately, I haven't given up yet. Fortunately, I still hold on to what I care about. Xiang Nan sprinted towards the other side of the bridge. Behind him, the woman looked at Xiang Nan's back and said, If you regret it now, there's still time. Xiang Nan's back was so firm that he didn't even stop for a moment, but instead, he ran even faster. The woman smiled and nodded. After all these years, apart from the old monk who was willing to sacrifice his body and turn it into a golden relic, he is the second person who refuses to let go of his obsession. All right, there are always infatuated people in this world. If they are all heartless, it would be meaningless for me to stay here. Xiang Nan ran into the last pavilion, memorized the formation incantations inside, and then stepped onto the bridge again. The woman was still there. She smiled and pointed east, saying, "The person you are looking for is in that direction." Xiang Nan hesitated for a moment and said, "You wanted to take away my memories, but now you want to help me?" The woman said, "You don't want to forget her. I can't take her away even if I want to. Why don't I let you have it? The deeper you remember her, the clearer the water in my river will be." Xiang Nan was thoughtful, but he did not stop. He cupped his fists and said, "Thank you." He sprinted all the way to the east, still remembering the woman who had been robbed. Dongfang! Dongfang! As Xiang Nan muttered these two words, he crossed the river and the sea of fire all the way to the place where the dream butterfly had been taken away. Lightning photoelectric eye. He wiped his eyes, trying to find the life force fluctuations left behind by the dream butterfly in the air. However, this place was too dark, there were too many ghosts and dense auras. It was extremely difficult to find weak signs of vitality in such an environment. Xiang Nan withdrew his lightning photoelectric eye and used his heavenly power finger. "See you." His eyes transformed into endless void. The world in front of him suddenly changed. In an instant, his eyes were filled with ghosts. The sky howled as he climbed painfully on the ground. However, the heavenly Quan finger was able to see all the phantasms, but because of this, he was even more unable to find the dream butterfly, that tiny bit of human-specific light of life. "I want to find her no matter what. I promised her that as long as I'm alive, I won't let her die." Xiang Nan gritted his teeth. He had an extremely bold idea. Lightning photoelectric eye. Heavenly power finger. The two eyesight techniques were released at the same time. At that moment, lightning flashed in Xiang Nan's left eye, and his right eye was as empty as nothingness. He actually succeeded. Xiang Nan was delighted in his heart. In this world, all demons, devils, and evil spirits, all life forms of spiritual energy, were in full view. Two different gazes looked at the same world, allowing Xiang Nan to instantly find that little bit of human vitality in the ghostly world. Still alive. The dream butterfly was still alive, but at this moment, her vitality was slowly being lost at a miraculous rate. Whoosh! Xiang Nan suddenly turned into a streak of black lightning. In a flash, it was 100 miles away. After landing on the ground, there was another boom. His entire body exploded with lightning, dragging a long tail of lightning as he ran wildly in the wilderness. However, his consciousness was already blurry, and a violent headache was wrapping around him. However, he did not care. He ran wildly all the way and kept falling. He did not even stop rolling and crawling. A large number of ghosts were attracted by the tyrannical lightning power on his body, and they approached him from the front, surrounding him. He raised his right hand high and drew out a gentle beam of sunlight. In the boundless darkness, only a beam of daylight enveloped him for a long time. But very quickly, he was surrounded by the ghosts so tightly that he almost pushed the ghosts forward while running. A divine weapon descended from the heavens. The dragon blood saber quickly sank into Xiang Nan's body, making his body incomparably hard. Fuck off. Sunquenching. Boom. The fierce sunlight descended, knocking out all the 4-meter-wide ghosts around Xiang Nan. Those nearby ghosts were eliminated by the sunlight while they were still flying backwards. It's getting closer, it's getting closer, it's getting closer. Xiang Nan glanced over and saw a woman floating in the distance through the rift between the ghosts. Found it. Xiang Nan's heart skipped a beat and he shouted, "Evil beast! I'll see where you can escape to. Even if you hide at the top of the sky and hide in the 9 nether underworld, I will still find you." The dream butterfly suddenly turned around and saw Xiang Nan. She laughed sinisterly and released a large amount of black gas. The black gas covered the sky and covered the earth, filling all the ghosts and monsters. And at this moment, those ghosts actually began to obey her orders. Countless ghosts had lost their rationality. Originally, they were afraid of the sunlight and began to retreat, but now, they rushed towards Xiang Nan with all their might. Quenching Yang couldn't last too long. Otherwise, even if he caught up to Dream Butterfly, if he used up all of his Yuan Qi, he would still lose it. Those ghosts pounced over one after another and crashed into the pillars of light. Xiang Nan simply put away the quenching sun. He jumped up and released the jade balance finger in formation on the ground with his right hand. Heavenly Arch. A star shone on the ground. Heavenly Dipper Realm. The second star began to shine. It was followed by the third star, the fourth star, the fifth star, and the sixth star. Heavenly Kuei returned to his throne. Heavenly Dipper returned to his position. Heavenly Secrets return. Tian Xian returned to his seat. Tian Yong returned to his throne. Tianxiong's returned to the throne. Those ghosts grabbed onto Xiang Nan's body sharply, gnawing on Xiang Nan's body, but they were unable to break through the defense of the dragon blood saber. After all 36 stars returned to their positions, the Heavenly Dipper Demon subduing array was completed. 36 of them shone brilliantly, forming an incomparably gigantic Big Dipper shape. At that moment, all the ghosts and monsters appeared, becoming visible and capable of being killed. Who? Xiang Nan rushed to the ground and his body suddenly stopped. This sudden stop caused a cyclone to rise around his body. At this moment, he had already withdrawn his divine weapon Sky Descent. The posture he had displayed was a horse-piercing step with a huge saber at his waist and a saber hilt in his right hand. He lowered his head and said in a deep voice, "Thunder." The raptor wagged its tail. Buzz. A lightning saber radiance that was almost round shot out tyrannically. Wherever that blade light passed, countless ghosts and monsters were slashed at the waist. All of them were sprayed with black liquid and died in the midst of screams. Chapter 493 Zhan Qihua. The lightning saber beam slashed 500 meters away, and all the ghosts within 500 meters were spared. It was all like wheat being cut off, harvested piece by piece. Within the range of the Heavenly Dipper Demon's subduing array, no ghost could escape Xiang Nan's saber. The Dream Butterfly was stunned. Her expression twisted as she turned around and fled. "Where else do you want to go?" Xiang Nan strode across the horse and made a posture of drawing his saber. He instantly used the shadow step. Whoosh! Just as Dream Butterfly was about to turn around and flee, she discovered that Xiang Nan had appeared in front of her in the posture of drawing his saber. Zha! The Dream Butterfly let out a shrill cry. Saber drawing slash. Xiang Nan slashed out with his saber and hit Dream Butterfly with the back of his saber. After the Dream Butterfly was taken away, its body strength was already extremely shocking, comparable to the Six Flowers ghost. Xiang Nan's saber strike only stopped her fleeing momentum, but it did not cause any more damage. Dream Butterfly was stunned for a moment, then grabbed her claws towards Xiang Nan's face. Phaseless Tribulation Finger. The black finger force struck the dream butterfly. The dream butterfly screamed and suddenly shed its shell. Success. Xiangnan was overjoyed. However, he did not expect that the 6 flowers ghost would be so bold. She let Dream Butterfly go and crashed into Xiangnan. This collision sent Xiangnan's soul flying outside. Sunquenching. Xiangnan was furious and a beam of sunlight shot down, sending the ghost flying from his body. The ghost was burned by the sunlight, causing black gas to shoot out from its body. She screamed miserably and drilled back into the Dream Butterfly's body. She took advantage of the fact that Xiangnan's soul had just returned to its original position and fled east once again. Dealing with this ghost gave Xiangnan a headache. He had so many big killing moves, but he couldn't use them. Killing her would also kill Dream Butterfly. Heavenly Jade Finger. Xiangnan landed on the ground and sprinted wildly, pointing at the Dream Butterfly. However, Dream Butterfly had already seen Tian Xian's finger several times. She actually knew how to dodge. With a flick of her body, she dodged the finger force. Xiangnan pursued wildly all the way, while she flew even faster. Seeing that she was about to escape again, Xiangnan took 4 flash steps and flashed 2 miles away. He immediately appeared beside Meng Dai. He formed a seal with both hands and shouted, "How lightning!" Pooh! A large ball of lightning rolled away, engulfing the Dream Butterfly. Xiangnan had set up the Heavenly Dipper Demon subduing array. Due to insufficient time, the outline of the array was relatively small. This place was already at the edge of the formation. After being hit by the lightning ball, the Dream Butterfly would still be able to withstand the deceleration effect. But the most important thing was that Xiangnan didn't know how to force the ghost out of the Dream Butterfly's body. Heavenly Pivot Finger. Taking advantage of Dream Butterfly's stiff body, Xiangnan pointed out and tied her up with a light cord. Dream Butterfly struggled with all her might, but just now, she had suffered a finger strike from the unparalleled Tribulation Finger, and her strength was no longer enough to break the light cord. What shall I do? Xiangnan frowned. He could feel that his Yuan Qi was being rapidly consumed by Dream Butterfly's resistance. Yaoguang Finger. No way. Using the Jade Light Finger, it directly shattered the Dream Butterfly and the ghost. That's right, use the Yang Opening Finger. This finger force is gentle. In more than 10 seconds, it can transcend the ghosts in her body without leaving a wound on her body. As Xiangnan muttered to himself, his hand didn't stop moving. When he released the Yang Opening Finger, he had already untied the light cord of the Heavenly Pivot Finger. The Dream Butterfly was hit by the Yang Opening Finger and bound to its original spot. She began to scream miserably, and black gas continued to emanate from her 7 orifices. Once the black gas emerged, it dissipated in midair. As more and more black gas emerged, Dream Butterfly's eyes began to regain their clarity. The spider web-like black patterns on both sides of her eyes were also declining. Chi 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 chi. But at this moment, Dream Butterfly suddenly let out a strange cry. Xiangnan had never heard such a cry from a ghost before. What? Xiangnan was stunned for a moment before he felt the ground beneath his feet begin to shake. He suddenly turned around, and a huge figure was running towards him with great strides from the horizon. The figure was 100 meters tall. When he started running, he could move his body away from the ground with a large stride. This step was actually 1,000 meters away. By the time Xiangnan realized it, the giant had already run from the horizon to the front. The giant had 2 heads. The one-eyed man on the left was red, and the one-eyed man on the right was blue. His pupils, on the other hand, were in the shape of 7 petals of flowers. Who? The giant swung a 100-meter iron rod and smashed it fiercely at Xiang Nan. F***ck. Xiang Nan couldn't help but curse. He didn't care about the ghosts in the transcendent dream butterfly anymore. He immediately released his young opening finger, hugged the weak dream butterfly, and rushed out with a flash step. Boom! The huge iron rod smashed into the ground, cracking the ground. The mud on both sides of the rod was blasted up and arched into 2 mountain ranges. The strong wind created by the iron rod smashing onto the ground sent Xiang Nan flying. Xiang Nan's speed of falling out was already extremely fast. He was blown into an afterimage by the strong wind. However, the giant was even faster. His body was too large. Just as Xiang Nan was falling, the giant twisted its waist and threw it out with an unbelievably long arm. With a single swing, it grabbed Xiang Nan, who had fallen into the air. Against a monster like this, no matter how fast you are, it's useless. You can charge 500 meters in an instant, but to him, who is 100 meters tall, you can only catch up with him in 1 step. A divine weapon descended from the heavens. Xiang Nan's reaction was extremely fast. When he was caught, he held the dream butterfly in his arms and used the divine weapon Heavenly Descent to merge the dragon blood saber into his body. Creak! The giant's hand held Xiang Nan in its palm, pressing down on Xiang Nan's body with a force heavier than the mountains, causing an unbearable sound of metal bending. The hardness of the high-grade earth-grade dragon blood saber in the hands of the giant began to distort. Xiang Nan's face turned red from being pinched, but he couldn't even lift his hand, and couldn't even release the phaseless tribulation finger. Shit! Shit! This is really bad. Xiang Nan's heart skipped a beat. Being held in the hands of such a monster, even if he had 100 powerful martial skills, it would be useless if he could not lift his arm. He felt all the bones in his body shrink and his internal organs squeeze in one direction. The indescribable crushing pressure was almost unbearable even for the divine weapon descending from the heavens. At this time, Xiang Nan saw the dream butterfly in his arms, raising her head, with a twisted smile on her face, as if she was mocking him. Xiang Nan's heart suddenly moved, and he fiercely bit down on the dream butterfly's face. The dream butterfly let out a miserable scream after being bitten. Ha! The giant was stunned for a moment before letting go of his palm and looking curiously at the center of his palm. Phaseless tribulation finger. A black finger force pierced through the giant's head with a whoosh. Heavenly pivot finger. Xiang Nan pointed with his left hand and wrapped it around the dream butterfly. At the same time, he drew his saber with his right hand and said, "Thunder!" The raptor wagged its tail. A huge bolt of lightning sliced out and struck one of the giant's necks. However, after the giant was hit by the phaseless tribulation finger, it was still unable to be cut off by the raptor's tail. The saber light pressed against the giant's neck as it frantically sliced through it. Brutal rays of light shot towards both sides, only tearing apart the skin on the giant's neck. The giant was furious, and he clenched his right hand into a fist and raised it high up. Xiang Nan roared, "If you want to play with me, I'll play with you to the end." Phaseless Tribulation Finger. Chapter 494 Fisherman's Prophet. Xiang Nan had already released his tribulation finger 3 times, 1 to attack the dream butterfly and 2 to attack the 100-meter giant. At this moment, Xiang Nan's realm had already fallen to the middle stage of the 3rd level of the origin reversion realm, and the 100m giant was not feeling any better. His strength had dropped even more. Yang Flame Saber Technique, Third Stance. Xiang Nan landed from mid-air. Just as his left foot stepped onto the ground, his waist twisted. The giant saber tilted upwards. It was too long and had already pierced into the ground. When it was lifted, a large amount of dust was turned upside down. Following that, a ray of Yang Flame Saber light rushed upwards. Xiang Nan had 3 of the most powerful killing moves. The first ranked was the Dragon Subduing Slash, the second ranked was Thunder, Dragon Shocking Sunshine, and the third ranked was the Yang Flame Saber Technique's third move. Because the power of thunder and the Azure Dragon coming out of the sea was not stable, it was a strong martial skill, so it could not be arranged in it. Even so, after hitting the 100-meter giant, his shockingly powerful Yang Flame Saber Light was only able to insert a 20-meter Yang Flame Saber Light into the giant's body. The saber light instantly pierced into the giant's chest, but it only cut into a depth of 4 to 5 meters before exhausting its essence, and the saber light disappeared along with it. This depth of 4 to 5 meters was absolutely fatal to ordinary people, but it wasn't a fatal injury to a giant that was 100 meters tall. The giant was enraged instead, and immediately became violent. His huge body suddenly leaned forward, and a red eyeball suddenly shot out a dark red magma. Holy shit! Xiang Nan kicked the dream butterfly and condensed her essence into her right foot. The essence exploded and shot Xiang Nan into the sky. At the same time, Xiang Nan also pointed a heavenly jade finger at the dream butterfly and imprisoned her. The giant's red eyeballs and the pillars of magma shot out were exactly the same as the fire monster in the Sea of Flames. The only difference was that the 100-meter giant was a 7 flowers ghost, and its magma was much more powerful than the fire monster. The magma pillar pierced through the ground, leaving a bottomless burning hole on the ground. Fortunately, Xiang Nan's reaction was quick, otherwise, both he and Dream Butterfly would suffer. This monster! Xiang Nan gritted his teeth. He had clearly been hit twice by his tribulation-free finger, yet he still had such terrifying combat strength. Even the Yang Flame Blade Light can't kill it. How can a monster like this be defeated? Xiang Nan's heart was burning with anxiety. The 100-meter giant had already fallen into a berserk state. With its red eyeballs, it continuously spat out strands of magma pillars. The magma pillars shot everywhere, causing the land in this area to be riddled with holes and black holes that were billowing everywhere. Xiang Nan desperately tried to dodge, but his realm had dropped too much, and his dodging speed was almost unsustainable. Ah, right. Suddenly, Xiang Nan thought of something. He only thought that he could use any martial skill to kill ghosts and monsters after setting up the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Array. It was this simple method that brought him trouble in the future. He should have used the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Finger. The power of the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Finger might not necessarily be stronger than the Yang Flame Blade Light, but the attributes of this finger technique were Tian Kuz, and it would definitely have an unexpected effect. Boom! Under Xiang Nan's hesitation, the magma pillar that the giant spat out had already hit Xiang Nan. A divine weapon descended from the heavens. Xiang Nan was shocked, but he reacted quickly. The moment his body was hit by the magma pillar, he immediately fused the dragon blood saber into his body. This time, Xiang Nan obtained the hardness of the dragon blood saber. The magma pillar sprayed onto his body, causing him to continuously slide backwards on the ground. And the temperature of this magma column was truly astonishing. It actually burned Xiang Nan's entire body red. It was like a weapon that had just been taken out of a forging furnace, and it hadn't cooled down yet. The 7 Flowers Ghost is simply heaven-defying. Xiang Nan felt that his whole body was extremely hot and dry. He saw that his skin had been burned to a translucent red color. If this continued, perhaps his body would melt like molten iron. Fortunately, the Seven Flowers ghost was still able to withstand the effects of the phaseless tribulation finger, and its magma pillar had already been sprayed out. Xiang Nan took a deep breath and said happily, "All right. Looks like I can withstand the heat from it now, and I won't die." However, the giant's other head also popped out. Its blue eyes looked at Xiang Nan, and with a whoosh, a strand of cold air shot out. Seeing this scene, Xiang Nan was so angry that he was about to curse the streets. Is this how it works? This thing has such high intelligence. Xiang Nan originally wanted to release the jade light finger, but after seeing the cold air, he ignored it and directly jumped up high to flee for his life. He had already been burned red. If he was hit by the cold energy again, it would definitely be extremely hot. If he encountered the extreme cold, his body would immediately shatter and die. The cold energy struck the earth, causing an ice field within a radius of 10 kilometers to instantly turn into an icy plain. Yao Guang Finger. Xiang Nan found the right opportunity and pointed at the giant. The finger power of the sun exploded out, hitting the giant's left head in an instant. Boom! The giant's head was actually directly shattered by the power of his fingers, and the broken bones and flesh scattered everywhere in the sky. Ah! Xiang Nan was stunned. He knew that Yao Guangji was powerful, but he didn't expect that he would be so powerful against ghosts. Originally, he had thought that it would be good if he could pierce through the giant with his strength. Unexpectedly, the giant was directly exploded. This heavenly dipper demon subduing finger is used to deal with the evil demons. It is truly undisadvantageous. Xiang Nan was happy in his heart. Although this kind of finger technique was useless against humans, seeing the crushing properties of ghosts and monsters at this moment could not be considered as a waste of learning. Right at this moment, the giant fell to the ground with a loud explosion. A red dot of light suddenly flew out from the shattered head. Ha! At this moment, after Xiang Nan exploded the giant, he had already begun to use his yang opening finger to absorb the Six Flowers ghost within the dream butterfly's body. Unexpectedly, after the monster died, something else flew out. It was in this daze that a shadow suddenly attacked from afar. The shadow's speed was so fast that it directly jumped into the air and grabbed the spot of light in its hand. And that person was actually in Xiaohui. Shit, the spoils of war have been taken away. Xiang Nan's heart skipped a beat, but he still didn't withdraw his yang opening finger. In his heart, saving Dream Butterfly was definitely the first priority. Ha! And Xiaohui grabbed the light and laughed loudly, "I've snatched the spoils of war from the Seven Flowers ghost. There's no need to think that this thing might be a heavenly grade martial skill." In the distance, a large group of martial artists from Shenliang and the others also quickly rushed over. Shenliang smiled and said, "Xiaohui is still smart. If he hadn't insisted on taking advantage of the fisherman just now, I'm afraid we wouldn't have been able to snatch this treasure." Only then did Xiang Nan realize that he was too focused on fighting. This group of people had been observing from afar for a long time. Yes. A Heavenly Desolation Calendar martial artist nodded his head and said happily, "Just now, I asked Shenliang to rush out and kill Xiang Nan. Fortunately, Xiaohui stopped us. Xiaohui, quickly take a look. What grade of martial skill is that?" Xiang Nan was still releasing his yang opening finger, and it had already lasted for 4 seconds. The screams of the ghost inside the dream butterfly's body grew louder and louder. Chapter 495 kill again. And Xiao Hui was very happy. He spread out his right palm, but when he saw what was in his hand, everyone was slightly stunned. Key. Shen Liangqi said, "Why is it not a martial technique, but a red key?" And Xiao Hui raised the key to let everyone see it clearly. The key was completely red. The key itself was very large, and could have in Xiao Hui's 2 palms or so. On top of the key was a red crystal pendant. The pendant floated out of thin air, pointing towards the west. How strange. And Xiao Hui said, "Could it be that this key can open a hidden treasure vault? Let's not talk about this. Let's kill that little bastard Xiang Nan first." Shen Liang was already eager to try. Yes. And Xiao Hui put the key into his storage ring and said, "Take revenge for our younger brother first." "Huh, Xiang Nan, let's see where you can escape to this time. Give me brother Sima's life." A person flashed out from behind Shen Liang. It was the severed Chu Yu. Chu Yu's right hand stretched out its 5 fingers, condensing 3 yuan qi arrows between its fingers and throwing them at Xiang Nan. At this moment, Xiang Nan's yang opening finger had already lasted until the 7th second, and he was about to succeed in the last 3 seconds. He gritted his teeth and resisted 3 arrows. The 3 yuan qi arrows struck Xiang Nan with a loud clanging sound. All 3 yuan qi arrows were ejected into the sky and did not penetrate Xiang Nan's body. "You can't, retreat." Shen Liang pushed Chu Yu away and slashed down at Xiang Nan with his sword in hand. "With your cultivation, you can't break this kid's defense at all." The strength of the dragon blood saber brought to Xiang Nan by the descent of the divine weapon was something that ordinary people could not break, but Shen Liang could. Shen Liang raised his sword high up, and the shadow of a green mountain appeared in the sky. Xiang Nan had already lasted for 8 seconds, but when he saw the phantom of the green mountain, his heart sank. He knew that he would most likely be unable to endure the pressure of the mountain. Seeing that the fatal sword was about to land, Xiang Nan hesitated, not knowing if he should let go of the dream butterfly first and flee for his life. However, he was already at the mid-3rd level of the origin return realm. Even if he really escaped, he might not be able to escape from their palms. With that, Xiang Nan let out a long sigh. He thought to himself, "I'm afraid that he would have to give an explanation here today." At this critical moment, the 100-meter giant, who was originally lying on the ground, suddenly jumped up with a loud boom. "Damn it! I've really seen a ghost." Shen Liang was shocked. The place where the giant jumped up happened to be very close to Shen Liang. The giant was already furious, waving its enormous arms and dancing around in the sky. Shen Liang hurriedly turned the sword light around and hacked the sword onto the giant's big arm. The power of the mountain instantly hit the giant's right arm, causing the giant to kneel on one knee. However, the giant's remaining head let out a heaven-shaking roar. It crazily carried the mountain and risked its life to lift it up. He saw that the terrifying mountain phantom had actually been knocked over by the giant. "Run! There's no time for revenge now." And Xiao Hui shouted. He turned around and ran without showing any morale. He didn't care if anyone else was alive or dead. Shen Liang and the others had witnessed the strength of this giant before. They did not know Xiang Nan's tribulation-free finger. At this moment, they had no other choice but to flee for their lives. "I want to kill Xiang Nan." That Chu Yu hated Xiang Nan too much. Even Shen Liang and Xiao Hui ran away, but she rushed towards Xiang Nan desperately. At this moment, Xiang Nan's yang opening finger continued for the 10th second. The ghost inside the dream butterfly finally let out the most ear-piercing scream. Peng Di instantly turned into a mist that dissipated with the wind. Chu Yu had already arrived in front of Xiang Nan. She knew that she could not kill Xiang Nan, so she used her heavenly Yin Fiend physique to bypass Xiang Nan and kill the dream butterfly. Xiang Nan quickly turned around and raised his hand to hit the heavenly pivot finger. The heavenly pivot finger struck Chu Yu and immediately sent her flying. At this moment, the giant also waved a huge iron rod and smashed towards him. Chu Yu flew backwards, and an iron rod appeared in front of her. Pang! How fast was Chu Yu bounced away? How powerful was the giant's iron rod? When this stick struck, Chu Yu's entire body was smashed into a red powder on the spot. He didn't even let out a miserable scream. Xiang Nan did not expect such a coincidence. He thought to himself, "You can't live if you do evil. This is also Chu Yu's fault. It really deserves it. But why is this thing still alive?" Xiang Nan felt his scalp go numb. The giant only had one head left and could continue to fight. Yao Guang finger. Xiang Nan shot out a finger of sunlight. The giant brandished an iron rod and smashed it into the sunlight finger. Its heaven-shaking power actually sent the jade finger flying. This is too exaggerated. Xiang Nan quickly retreated, and the iron rod landed, hitting the ground with a loud boom. A violent gust of wind instantly sent Xiang Nan flying, and his god rolled in the air differently. He was actually able to find an opportunity to shoot another jade finger at the giant. However, the giant already had experience. He brandished an iron rod and smashed Yao Guang's finger away with another stick. Xiang Nan didn't expect that a 7 flowers ghost would be so difficult to deal with. That stupid stick is too much of a hindrance. Xiang Nan thought quickly in his heart. As long as the jade light finger didn't hit the giant directly, it wouldn't be able to cause any fatal injuries to the giant. The giant ran over with large strides. He only took 2 large strides and crossed a distance of 200 meters before catching up to Xiang Nan. Go all out. Phaseless Tribulation Finger. Seeing the iron rod fall again, Xiang Nan could only clench his teeth and shoot out a Phaseless Tribulation Finger. The Phaseless Tribulation Finger struck the iron rod, which immediately decayed and fell off. When the rod landed only 2 meters above Xiang Nan's head, the entire rod collapsed into rust with a loud sound. Xiang Nan's realm had already fallen to the late stage of the second stage of the Origin Return realm. This realm was extremely dangerous on this level. Yao Guang finger. Without the iron rod blocking the way, Xiang Nan struck the giant's last head with his jade finger. However, this time, the jade light finger pierced through the giant's head and did not detonate its head. Again. Xiang Nan was sent flying by the giant's slap. As he was sent flying, he released a jade finger. This jade finger directly hit the giant's blue one-eyed man. Pooh! The blue eyeball exploded, and the finger force pierced through the giant's eyeball, shooting out from the back of its head. The giant staggered and finally fell to the ground again. As for Xiang Nan, he was sent flying over 500 meters away by the fan and rolled several hundred times on the ground before finally stopping. When he got up, he spat out a mouthful of blood, and his internal organs were shocked to the point of cracking. This power, cough. Xiang Nan knelt on the ground, feeling dizzy and his ears buzzing. He possessed the hardness of the dragon blood saber, but he was still beaten like this by the giant. If he hadn't learned how to use the divine weapon before, he would probably have been shattered into powder by now. Dream. Dream butterfly. Xiang Nan ignored his injuries and crawled forward with great difficulty. In this short distance of more than 500 meters, Xiang Nan had climbed for almost 10 minutes. Chapter 496 A Vow of Invincibility. Fortunately, it was time for Xiang Nan to return to the body of Xiang Nan after the first time he had lowered the phaseless tribulation finger. Xiang Nan's serious injuries eased a little. Dream Butterfly. He looked worriedly at the unconscious Dream Butterfly, his heart burning with fire, not even caring about the blood at the corner of his mouth. The Dream Butterfly had been taken away by the Six Flowers ghost for too long, so she didn't know if she would be able to wake up. Xiang Nan gritted his teeth and immediately used the Nine Purities Cosmos skill to help Dream Butterfly absorb Yuan Qi. Xiang Nan felt his consciousness becoming more and more blurry. He had already released the tribulation-free finger many times, and his body was already very weak. In addition, he had been pinched by the giant and slapped again. At this moment, he didn't want to give Dream Butterfly his life to cross into Yuan Qi. These kinds of things made Xiang Nan even weaker. Minutes and seconds passed, and each second was as long as a year for Xiang Nan. He saw that Dream Butterfly hadn't awakened yet, and his Yuan Qi was gradually drying up. A feeling that he was about to lose his loved ones surged into his heart, causing Xiang Nan to burst into tears. At this moment, a gentle hand gently stroked Xiang Nan's cheek. Dream Butterfly. Xiang Nan was excited. He was pleasantly surprised to find that Dream Butterfly had already opened her eyes. Don't cry, Dream Butterfly weakly stroked Xiang Nan and looked at Xiang Nan affectionately. This sentence, "Don't cry," made Xiang Nan feel as if he had knocked over a Schizandra bottle. He hurriedly wiped away his tears and kept laughing. Finally, he was saved. Xiang Nan experienced all sorts of tribulations, crossed the sea of fire, crossed the bridge of helplessness, killed the Seven Flowers giant, and crossed the Six Flowers ghost. In the end, he used the courage of a man to defend his oath. Xiang Nan's heart spun 1,000 times, but he could not say anything. He just hugged the Dream Butterfly tightly in his arms. At this moment, Xiang Nan hugged the weak and boneless beauty, but her heart was as warm as a sun. Meng Dai gently leaned her head against Xiang Nan's shoulder and said, "I saw everything you did for me. I saw everything you did for me. I know you will definitely save me. I have never doubted that." Xiang Nan heaved a sigh of relief, but he felt his eyes darken and he suddenly fainted. He was too tired. He was too tired along the way. Finally, he reached the limit of his body and could no longer hold on. After an unknown amount of time, Xiang Nan felt a few drops of ice-cold water splashing out from his face, awakening him from his coma. The first thing he saw when he opened his eyes was that he was lying in the arms of Dream Butterfly, and she was looking down at him with infinite tenderness. So it was her tears. Crystalline tears rolled to the tip of her long black eyelashes, then condensed into water droplets that fell onto Xiang Nan's face. At that time, Xiang Nan saw an unprecedented tenderness on Dream Butterfly's face. She was a demonic woman of the heavenly devil religion, and this expression was something Xiang Nan had never seen before. "How long have I been unconscious?" Xiang Nan coughed a few times and hurriedly changed the subject. The Dream Butterfly used a finger to gently push away the teardrops on her eyelashes and said with a smile, "Coward. You didn't even give up your life for me, but you didn't dare to look me in the eye." Xiang Nan was not used to this state, so he struggled to sit up. Meng Dai sighed, "You just fainted for less than 10 minutes before you woke up again. I really love you." Xiang Nan sat cross-legged, circulating the Nine Purities Cosmos skill to heal his injuries, and his cultivation had already recovered to the late stages of the three great origins. Dream Butterfly handed a blue key to Xiang Nan and said, "When you were unconscious, I found this beside the giant." As Xiang Nan circulated his martial arts, he asked curiously, "So there are keys in both of the giants' heads, one red and one blue. I wonder what this key is used to open. Could it really be a treasury, as in Xiao Hui said?" Meng Dai said, "It is very likely that after the ghosts on this level are killed, there is a very small chance that a martial skill will fall out. Since this key is not a martial skill, it should also be some kind of reward. Look at this blue crystal pendant. It has been pointing to the west. You can recover first. When your body recovers, it's not too late for us to search for it." "Yes." Xiang Nan nodded and began to focus on recovering from his injuries and the realm he had fallen into. After he used the 9 Purities Cosmos skill to completely recover his injuries, he attracted heavenly lightning to restore his Yuan Qi to perfection. At this moment, Xiang Nan had already returned to his peak state, and his sense of security had greatly increased. "Alright, let's." Just as Xiang Nan was about to speak, a huge black plant suddenly grew behind the Dream Butterfly. At the top of the plant was a black flower 10 meters in diameter. The flower bloomed, and its stamens had 5 rows of sharp teeth, forming a 5-star shape. The moment the black flower appeared, it bit down on the Dream Butterfly. Mo Rushi. Xiang Nan Xia consciously raised his hand and pointed at the heavenly pivot. The heavenly pivot finger hit black flower and sent it flying 7 to 8 meters away. "It's really her." Xiang Nan's heart sank. Even if his heavenly pivot finger hit the 5 flowers ghost, it would be able to bounce it away for more than 1,000 meters. However, this black flower was only bounced out for 7 to 8 meters. That must be Mo Rushi. Apart from her strength at the 4th level of the heavenly Yuan realm, who else could have the strength to resist the heavenly pivot finger? Sure enough, in the distant sky, there was a small black dot. It kept jumping high and landing quickly. Then, it continued to jump and rushed towards Xiang Nan. At the same time, Mo Ru also used powerful tricks to set up strange plants around Xiang Nan. Xiang Nan used his heavenly pivot finger to send those plants flying 7 to 8 meters away. "Let's go." Meng Dai hurriedly said, "Mo Ru is too far away. Her magic is limited. Once she approaches us, you won't be able to touch her plants at all." Xiang Nan. In the distance, Mo Rushi was rapidly approaching and letting out a venomous scream. Xiang Nan picked up the Dream Butterfly and ran wildly. He refined his qi into lightning, turning his body into an afterimage. There was a long tail of lightning behind him. However, even if Mo Rushi couldn't fly, she was still a Tianyuan 4-dan martial artist. The distance between her and Xiang Nan was still rapidly narrowing. Plants continued to grow wildly. Xiang Nan ran wildly all the way, and the plants growing around his body also spread all the way. "This won't do. If we continue to waste time, she will catch up with us in less than 30 seconds. Xiang Nan was very anxious. "But, are you using lightning evasion here? If they happen to charge into the ghost, the side effects of using the Void Stone would kill both Xiang Nan and Dream Butterfly." At this moment, Dream Butterfly whispered in Xiang Nan's ear, 36 Heavenly Spirit Star Map. "Ah! You're still smart." Xiang Nan suddenly understood what Meng Dai meant. He quickly thought about it in his mind and calculated the pavilions closest to him with the arrangement of the star map. At this moment, there were a total of 3 pavilions closest to him. One was 70 li to the left, one was 90 li to the right, and one was 80 li to the right. Chapter 497. The bridge is still open. Right ahead, 92 li. Xiang Nan quickly said, "Hold on." At this moment, Mo Rushi was only 500 meters away from Xiang Nan. As for the black plant that she was releasing now, its power was already very close to the 4th level of the heavenly Yuan realm due to its close proximity to her body. Even if Xiang Nan used the jade light to point at the plant, he would not be able to damage it in the slightest. "Where are you fleeing to?" Mo Rushi cried out excitedly. She could immediately avenge Su Qing. Flash shadow steps. Xiang Nan hugged the dream butterfly horizontally and a plant suddenly grew under his feet. At the moment when the plant was already coiling around his legs, a flash step rushed out. Immediately afterwards, he executed 7 flash steps to the left, a total of 8 times, 500 meters at a time, 8 miles away. Mo Ru did not expect that Xiang Nan would give up on fleeing in a straight line, and instead quickly flashed backwards to the left. Xiang Nan's sudden turn of course caught Mo Ru off guard, making it impossible for her to accurately predict Xiang Nan's next landing point. 8 flash steps caused Xiang Nan to be 100 miles away from the pavilion in front of him. Now, Xiang Nan squatted slightly and adjusted his direction. He turned into a streak of black lightning and disappeared. Who? Xiang Nan suddenly landed on the ground, and it happened to be 100 li. It landed in a pavilion. He let go of the dream butterfly in a daze and lay down on his back, panting heavily. Success. It's not bad at all. Meng Dai heaved a sigh of relief and carefully massaged Xiang Nan's temples. She said, "Your control over the position of the 36 heavenly spirit star diagram is truly unbelievable." Xiang Nan's consciousness was very blurry, and he said with difficulty, "Previously, I went through all these pavilions, so I was very clear about their location. I just didn't expect this Mo Ru to arrive so quickly. I originally thought that Dong Wushang would be the first to arrive." Meng Dai said that Mo Ru is an expert in the mysterious Tao, especially when she cultivates a strange technique. With her ability, she surpasses Dong Wushang at the gate of hell on the upper floor. However, your heavenly dipper demon subduing finger is actually effective against her strange techniques. It seems that this kind of finger technique has great potential. Yes. Xiang Nan nodded and said, "I wonder if she has found our escape route. Anyway, it's better to leave this place quickly. She's already here. I believe Dong Wushang will be here soon." After Xiang Nan regained his consciousness, he immediately ran towards the west with the dream butterfly in his arms. Along the way, he encountered 3 more 5 flowers ghosts. Xiang Nan was not polite at all. When he met, he used his finger to directly blow up the 5 flowers ghost. However, his luck wasn't so good, and he didn't see any martial arts techniques falling out. If it weren't for Mo Ru's arrival, we could have stayed here for a while longer and killed more 5 flowers ghosts. With the power of your jade light finger, it should be very easy to deal with the 6 flowers ghost. Meng Dai said. Xiang Nan said, "It's not that easy to find a martial skill. I don't know how many times I've been robbed of this level by the seniors. And Xiao Hui and the others were lucky to obtain a martial skill. Io, look ahead." Dream Butterfly suddenly trembled. Xiang Nan raised his head and saw 2 female 6-flower ghosts floating in the distant sky. Those 2 ghosts were already eyeing Xiang Nan. How many of these are there? When Xiang Nan saw this kind of thing, his enemies were envious of him. The 2 ghosts had already flown over in unison. Xiang Nan raised his hand and struck out with a jade finger. The jade finger pierced through the stomach of a ghost. When the other ghost saw this, it was so frightened that it screamed and ran away. The ghost whose stomach had been pierced by the finger fell to the ground and kept screaming miserably. When Xiang Nan passed by her, he pointed at her head and blew her head off the spot. Ha! Meng Dai happily clapped her hands and said, "The heavenly dipper demon subduing finger is invincible here. Yes, as long as we don't encounter 7 flowers." Xiang Nan said. It was a fluke to be able to defeat the 7 flowers ghost last time, because the giant was lured over by the female ghost and just happened to have introduced the heavenly dipper demon subduing array. However, if he suddenly encountered a new giant now, judging from the giant's speed, Xiang Nan probably wouldn't have time to set up the heavenly dipper demon subduing array. Fortunately, the number of 7 flowers ghosts was small. The 2 of them ran all the way until they crossed the Sea of Flames and arrived at the Bridge of Helplessness. They never encountered each other again. "What can I do?" Dream Butterfly looked at the 2 words on the side of the bridge and said thoughtfully, "There really is such a bridge. I only thought that the helpless bridge was something that only legends would have. This is fake." Xiang Nan said, "Even the so-called hell on this floor is fake. This place is obviously arranged according to the legendary hell. The woman on the bridge is not Granny Meng, but a 9 flowers ghost." 9 flowers? Meng Dai was so scared that her face turned pale. She said in shock, "Then, how can we beat her?" Xiang Nan comforted, "Don't worry, the intelligence of this 9 radiance ghost is already very high, and it is not even inferior to some sages among humans. She won't casually attack humans. She doesn't have that kind of need." Xiang Nan hugged the dream butterfly and stepped onto the Bridge of Helplessness again. The woman stood in the middle of the bridge and smiled, "We meet again." "Yes." Xiang Nan respectfully bowed to the woman, "Thank you for showing mercy last time, Senior." The woman looked deeply at Meng Dai and said, "Do you know how many memories this young master has endured on this bridge for you?" "Ah." Dream Butterfly was stunned. The woman smiled and gently flicked her index finger at Meng Dai. A drop of black water landed between her eyebrows and merged into it. "This is the water of memory that he left behind for you on the bridge." Dream Butterfly felt a buzzing sound in her mind. Then, some memories that did not belong to her suddenly appeared in her mind. In a short amount of time, she had experienced the various feelings Xiang Nan had experienced on this bridge once more. She obtained Xiang Nan's memories at that time, and also saw how Xiang Nan cried on the bridge, how he struggled, and how he confronted the woman in order not to forget himself, and even wanted to fight against the 9 flowers ghost. Dream Butterfly lay on Xiang Nan's shoulder. Her words were not enough to express the touching feeling in her heart. "Good brother, from the first time I was saved by you, I knew that you were the most tender man in the world and the hero in my heart. Only someone like you can make me fall in love without reservation." Xiang Nan smiled. After bidding farewell to the woman on the bridge, he carried the dream butterfly and continued to run west. "Heh." The woman on the bridge lowered her head and laughed, "Human emotions are really interesting. Perhaps, it's time for me to leave this place and take a look at the human world." She flipped open her palm and held a golden ball in her hand. "The old monk said that this golden body relic can protect me from the sun. When I am free, I can leave this place." The woman took a deep look at Xiang Nan's departing figure and said, "If I said that I had fulfilled him, it would be better to say that he had fulfilled me. He crossed his bridge, and I, too, should cross mine. Helpless, helpless." The woman smiled and finally got off the bridge, heading east. Chapter 498 Myriad Beast Plane. After crossing the bridge, Xiang Nan and the others arrived at the last pavilion not far away. Since there were no more ghosts on the west side of the bridge, no one would enter this pavilion specifically. Look, is there something flying beside that pavilion? This was the first time Dream Butterfly saw the 36th pavilion. Driven by curiosity, she looked at the pavilion twice. Xiang Nan looked in the direction and saw a small, paper man practicing martial arts. Are my eyes dizzy? That thing seems to be practicing martial arts. Xiang Nan was shocked. The two of them quietly approached and looked again, but they were even more confused by what they saw in front of them. It was a piece of paper. To be exact, it was a paper man that had been folded into human silhouettes. This paper man was flapping his wings and practicing happily on the stone table in the pavilion, yet it was actually practicing the Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Finger. Although its Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Finger was only a ridiculous imitation of finger movements, it did not possess any power. It seems to be imitating you. Dream Butterfly found it very interesting. Was this piece of paper following you all along? Otherwise, why would it learn your Heavenly Dipper Demon Subduing Finger? I have no idea. Xiang Nan rubbed his nose, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. I was eager to save you before, so I didn't pay attention to anything else. I just kept rushing. In other words, it discovered me earlier and ran very far with me. When it finally arrived at this pavilion, it stayed here. How miraculous! Dream Butterfly couldn't help but praise, these flying papers have been bestowed with great spirituality. They even know how to imitate human behavior. I can't bear to catch it anymore. It's fine. It's not like we're going to destroy it. Xiang Nan smiled and waved at the paper man. The paper man stared blankly at Xiang Nan. Then, he actually flew over and landed in Xiang Nan's palm. Are you practicing martial arts? Xiang Nan said. Just as he said that, he patted his forehead and said, "Damn it, I'm talking to a piece of paper." The little paper man was covered in words. He stood proudly in Xiang Nan's palm and pointed his hand at Xiang Nan's nose. The little bird descended from the sky and stood on Xiang Nan's shoulder. Like a mighty general, it raised its small chest and pointed its wings at the paper man with contempt. The paper man turned around and pointed at Little Sparrow with contempt. The little bird narrowed its eyes, and a sinister cold light flashed through the corner of its eyes. It also landed in Xiang Nan's hand. The paper man took 2 steps back and made a glowing finger gesture. With a slap, he pointed his finger at the bird's sharp mouth. The little bird was furious. It also took a step back and used the tip of its wings to imitate its fingers. Pa! 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 Xiang Nan gently flicked the bird on his hand and scolded, "Are you even sicker than me? Why are you mad at a piece of paper?" He unfolded the paper man and said to Dream Butterfly, "Indeed, it is the same as the martial skill chapters we collected earlier." Meng Dai nodded her head. "In that case, we have collected 6 of them. Let's go. There's nothing left to miss here anymore." Xiang Nan picked up the Dream Butterfly and continued westward. Not long after, a space-time passageway to the next level appeared in front of him. The two of them exchanged a glance. Xiang Nan said, "Next is the 7th floor. Devil Sea, we're almost done." He jumped in with the Dream Butterfly on his back and entered the next level of space-time. Following that, their eyes lit up and they suddenly became enlightened. In front of him was a boundless plain. Looking around, there was no end to the plain. In the distance, one could vaguely see the edge of a forest. As soon as they entered, Xiang Nan and Dream Butterfly both smelled a very pungent smell. "There's a stone tablet here." Dream Butterfly pointed to the left. Xiang Nan pulled her over to take a look. There were 4 words written on the stone stele: Myriad Beast Plain. Meng Dai took out the blue key and saw that the pendant of the key was still pointing to the west. "It seems that the so-called treasure vault is on this floor," she said. "I don't know what's on this floor. Let's break into it first." Xiang Nan carefully picked up the Dream Butterfly and headed west. This level already belonged to 210,000 years ago. The vegetation on the vast plains was completely different from the era Xiang Nan lived in. More than 50% of the plants were unseen in Xiang Nan, not even recorded in ancient documents. The scenery here was also very special. The plains were filled with weeds. Those weeds were extremely tall. When Xiang Nan walked in, he discovered that these ordinary weeds were 3 to 4 meters tall. It was as if he was in a small jungle. The visibility here is very poor. We need to pay more attention, Meng Dai said. Xiang Nan condensed his Yuan Qi onto his right leg and lightly kicked on the ground. The Yuan Qi immediately spread out, and the tremendous trembling force shattered all the weeds within a radius of 1 mile into powder. Just like that, the two of them walked all the way, clearing away the obstacles in their field of vision. Not long after they left, a huge shadow suddenly enveloped Xiang Nan and the other two. The two of them raised their heads to look, and what they saw in front of them caused their mouths to open wide in shock. In the sky, a giant bird that covered the sky and the sun was slowly flying past. When the giant bird fully spread its wings had already reached an astonishing length of 500 meters. Ancient behemoths. Xiang Nan subconsciously said, "This is the space-time zone 210,000 years ago. There are many extinct beasts that can be seen here. This is truly an eye-opener." As soon as they finished speaking, an incomparably large black pillar descended from the sky 100 meters to the right of the two of them. The black pillar stomped on the ground with a loud boom. Even the earth trembled, followed by tremors from other directions. As Xiang Nan and the other two raised their heads, they discovered that a black spider that was nearly 300 meters tall was passing over their heads. The black pillar was the spider's long legs. "Wow!" Dream Butterfly's eyes widened as she said, "What a big spider." The spider was over 300 meters tall, but it was much smaller than the giant bird. It was just that the spider's legs were too long. Xiang Nan gripped the dragon blood saber tightly and said, "It's naturally very interesting to see an extinct ancient beast. However, since the ancient beast is still alive on this level, it means that there will be ancient demonic beasts here." "Ah, right." Dream Butterfly hurriedly nodded, "Let's not randomly shatter the weeds. If an ancient demonic beast rushes out, then it won't be fun." 210,000 years ago, the human world was not as developed as Wu Yuanli. The human race and the demon race in the world could be said to be competing against each other. In the natural world filled with the aura of the ancient times, spiritual energy and demonic energy were on par. In this era, many ancient demonic beasts were born. Some of them were absolutely terrifying to the ancient and modern times, and they were notoriously vicious. Chapter 499 Enclosed Field. The power of nature is always great. It has created countless miracles of life. Throughout the entire history of nature, humans were definitely not the only outstanding individuals. In terms of speed and strength, humans were far from being the opponents of the demon race. But nature has given humanity the most outstanding work of art, and that is wisdom. Wisdom allowed people to think and create. They used their supreme wisdom to create dazzling cultivation techniques, martial skills, profound Tao techniques, profound Tao paradox techniques, and so on. But in this ancient era, even arrogant and lofty humans could only carefully survive in the cracks. While praising the magnificent scene of the ancient era, Xiang Nan and the others were also prepared to welcome the battle at any time. However, after half a day, they suddenly found themselves on a battlefield. Looking around, there were broken weapons of humans, broken limbs of giant beasts, and blood-stained red earth everywhere. The blood is fresh. It seems that there has only been a battle here recently. Xiang Nan twisted the red earth and sniffed under his nose. Judging from the dryness of the blood, it should have only flowed out a few days ago. The further they walked, the more shocked they became. More ancient beast corpses appeared, and they discovered that they were simply like mass graves from ancient times. The enormous corpses of giant beasts spread across the vast grasslands. Some of the corpses were lying on the ground, 30 to 40 meters tall. What shocked Xiang Nan even more was that the corpses of the martial origin calendar martial practitioners had already begun to appear here. This person, Xiang Nan, discovered the Western region's clothing on a human corpse. This is a Western region martial artist. Meng Dai said, although the corpse has been damaged to the point of being in tatters, it has obviously not been corroded. I'm afraid that it has been less than 5 days since it died. He didn't seem to have been killed by an ancient beast or an ancient demonic beast. Xiang Nan examined the corpse of this Western region martial artist. He also discovered that there were 5 fatal cracks on this martial artist's body, as if he had been grabbed by a 5-fingered monster. The wound, along with the martial artist's ribs, was cut off at the same time. The wound was very shocking. Ancient behemoths don't have such small claws. Meng Dai frowned. Why does it look like his wound was cut by a human nail? The two of them continued to walk forward, and human corpses constantly appeared in front of them. Suddenly, Xiang Nan stopped in his tracks. His face was filled with shock and sorrow as he said, Du Xiuyuan. Senior brother Xiuyuan. Senior brother Yusheng. Senior sister Cueya. The corpses of the 3 disciples of the Haran sect were actually discovered here. Who killed them? Xiang Nan's eyes were incomparably red as he angrily said, it must have been in Xiao Hui and the others. No, look carefully. Dream Butterfly hurriedly pointed at Du Xiuyuan's corpse and said, he was torn apart by someone with his bare hands. Look at the tear in his stomach, there are clearly 5 scratches. Although in Xiao Hui and the others have this kind of ability, they are all using weapons. It is unlikely that they will tear people apart with their bare hands. Although Xiang Nan and Du Xiuyuan weren't very familiar, they were still fellow disciples. He felt sad in his heart, but the only thing he could do was to bury the bodies of Du Xiuyuan and the others on the spot and let them be buried in peace. As he walked forward, what he saw and heard confirmed what Dream Butterfly said. Because they found the corpse of an acquaintance. That was a strong man. Judging from his clothes, he should be an expert from the Flood Stream organization. This sturdy man had been bitten through his shoulder by something, and his entire left shoulder and 1/3 of his left chest cavity had disappeared. What exactly happened to them? Xiang Nan's heart grew heavier and heavier. Could it be that there really are small ancient demonic beasts here? Meng Dai began to doubt her previous judgment. No human martial artist would kill in this way, right? Even if some corrupt cultivators do have sharp fingernails, they rarely use their mouths to bite directly. Besides, who has such a big mouth? Xiang Nan narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "Yes. You know a martial artist who can bite people with his mouth?" Dream Butterfly was confused and asked curiously, "Isn't that the same as a wild beast?" Xiang Nan's face was calm as he continued to move forward without saying a word. As the two of them walked until dusk, the ancient forest on the left began to spread over. The afterglow of the setting sun fell on Xiang Nan's face, but he stopped. On the left, a person wearing a black cloak was standing quietly on a towering tree at the edge of the ancient jungle. Xiang Nan did not turn around to look at him. Instead, he subconsciously blocked the dream butterfly on the right side of his body. As for the person wearing the black cloak, he glided down lightly. He was as light as a feather and could actually glide in the air. When that person landed, it happened to be 5 meters in front of Xiang Nan. This person's realm wasn't too high. He was similar to Xiang Nan, only at the 5th level of origin return. Xiang Nan looked at the man and found that his entire body was shrouded in a cloak. His face in the shadows was exceptionally ferocious. "No outlet." That person said indifferently, "Turn around immediately. Otherwise, there will be no forgiveness for killing." Xiang Nan took a deep breath and said, "People from the Profound Sky Sect, what are you doing here?" The Profound Sky Sect. Meng Dai was stunned. She felt very strange in her heart. The person on the other side was wearing only a black cloak, and he did not have any sect costume symbols on him. How did Xiang Nan recognize him? That person was also slightly stunned as he said, "Judging from what you wear, you are also a martial artist from the martial origin calendar. Which sect are you from? Do you have some connection with the Profound Sky Sect? Report to your sect as soon as possible so as to avoid accidentally injuring your friend." Among the 8 great sects, there were several sects that had good relations with the Profound Sky Sect. This person's words clearly acknowledged that he was a disciple of the Profound Sky Sect. "We are from the Sacred Church." Dream Butterfly stepped in front of Xiang Nan and answered the questions of the Black Sect disciples. She knew that Xiang Nan's relationship with the Profound Sky Sect was very bad. With Xiang Nan's stubborn temper, she might report her identity as the Nature Sect. When Xiang Nan heard Meng Dai's words, he only frowned slightly, but he did not puncture her. Holy Sect. The Black Sect disciple was stunned for a moment and said, "So it's people from the Heavenly Devil religion. What are you doing in such a place? Listen to my advice. Leave now. This myriad beast plane has already been covered by the Profound Sky Sect. What if I don't leave?" Xiang Nan looked at the man's eyes indifferently. The disciples of the Heavenly Profound Sect laughed, "Although the Heavenly Demon Sect is crazy, my Heavenly Profound Sect is not afraid of you. Don't blame me for not reminding you." As he spoke, the Black Sect disciple raised his right hand high up, and his 5 fingernails suddenly grew, becoming incomparably sharp. Demonic transformation. Xiang Nan nodded and said, "Indeed, my guess is correct. Your transformation is exactly the same as Xiang Long's." "Huh, I didn't expect you to know that trash Xiang Long." The disciples of the Black Sect rushed towards Xiang Nan one after another. Chapter 500 Beast Soul. Xiang Nan took a step forward and slashed down at the disciples of the Heavenly Profound Sect with the huge saber in his hand. In mid-air, the sharp claws of the disciples of the Heavenly Profound Sect collided head-on with the Dragon Blood Saber. The blade of the Dragon Blood Saber directly slashed into the palms of the disciples of the Heavenly Profound Sect. However, this slash made a crisp sound. Xiang Nan could only feel an endless force hitting the Dragon Blood Saber, causing him to miss a single one of them, and the Dragon Blood Saber actually flew away. The hilt of the dragon blood saber was wrapped around Xiang Nan's arm, and he couldn't even catch the saber. The trembling force of the giant saber caused Xiang Nan to slide backwards more than 10 meters. On the other hand, the disciples of the Black Sect had also retreated more than 10 meters. This scene caused Xiang Nan's pupils to contract. This disciple of the Heavenly Profound Sect was also at the 5th level of the Origin Return Realm, exactly the same as Xiang Long. However, his strength was more than 3 or 4 levels stronger than Xiang Long's. With Xiang Nan's current strength, even if Xiang Long used the Bronze Wave, he would definitely be cut in half. How is this possible? The Black Sect disciples were shocked. Actually, Xiang Nan should have asked this question. "You brat, your strength is abnormal." The expression of the Black Sect disciples changed and they rushed towards Xiang Nan again. Xiang Nan waved his right hand and the dragon blood saber on the ground hummed. Then, it flew back to Xiang Nan's hand with a clang. The Black Sect disciples' right claws suddenly tripled in size. His claws were pitch black, and the back of his hand was covered with long hair. Moreover, his entire claw was wrapped in a strange layer of Yuan Qi. This kind of Yuan Qi was not pure. It was about half Yuan Qi and half demonic Qi, but it was stronger than any other kind of Yuan Qi and demonic Qi. Xiang Nan did not hold back. This saber strike was precisely the Yang Flame Saber technique. His saber light did not release, but condensed onto the blade, causing the dragon blood saber to immediately burn, turning into a giant Yang Flame Saber. Boom! Xiang Nan's body slipped 3 to 4 meters, while the disciples of the Heavenly Profound Sect directly flew out. After he landed, he covered his chest and blood oozed out from the corner of his mouth. What a powerful force! Xiang Nan frowned. That day, the disciple of the Black Sect directly took a saber strike from him, but he was still hit by the Yang Flame Saber light on the spot. However, this saber strike was actually unable to cut off the Heavenly Profound Sect disciple's palms. You! The Black Sect disciple was furious that day. He jumped into the air and shouted, "Battle Eagle pouncing on food." Behind the disciples of the Black Sect, a phantom image of an ancient giant eagle suddenly appeared. That giant eagle was obviously a demonic beast. The Yuan Qi on this person's body surged violently. His entire body spread out his arms and pounced towards Xiang Nan. The rolling Yuan Qi caused the earth to begin to tremble. The power of this move was simply too strong. Even though Xiang Nan's current strength had increased by leaps and bounds, he still felt a little unable to withstand it. However, Xiang Nan also had the strength to do so. He definitely could not retreat in front of the disciples of the Heavenly Profound Sect. He stabbed the huge saber into the ground, and a shadow of an azure dragon's tail suddenly appeared behind him. Ah! The Black Sect disciple was rushing over that day. When he saw the azure dragon phantom, his entire body was stunned. He screamed, "Where did you get this azure dragon phantom? Could it be that there is an azure dragon in the myriad beast plains?" Xiang Nan ignored his question and released the lightning on the spot. The azure dragon went out to sea. In the midst of the terrifying lightning, Xiang Nan charged out fiercely and collided with the disciples of the Black Sect. Roar! The dragon blood saber trembled as a dragon roar resounded through the wilderness. Lightning Meridian's attribute. You're Xiang Nan. The Black Sect disciples cried out in alarm. Pull! Saber! Slash! Xiang Nan raised his great saber and a bolt of lightning shot into the sky. The Black Sect disciple's face was filled with disbelief as he was sliced in half by the lightning blade. Xiang Nan retracted his saber and gasped slightly. This person's strength is too exaggerated. My Azure Dragon is actually unable to withstand him when he goes out to sea. If the Azure Dragon hadn't pulled out his saber to slash this move, Xiang Nan and the disciples of the Heavenly Profound Sect would at most have fought back and forth. What's going on? Dream Butterfly was also confused. With your new Azure Dragon move, even an 8th level origin returning martial artist wouldn't be able to withstand it. Check his storage ring, Xiang Nan said. Dream Butterfly immediately removed the storage ring from the disciples of the Heavenly Profound Sect and poured it onto the ground. As a result, there was nothing else in this person's storage ring. Instead, it was filled with small bottles. Those bottles were all painted with strange profound Tao runes. Not only was the bottle stuffed with a stopper, it was also sealed with a small talisman. There were at least 1,000 of these small bottles. This talisman, Dream Butterfly held the small bottle in front of her and looked at it. This talisman is used by Xiandao evil sect members to seal their souls. Yes, I think I already know what's going on. Xiang Nan took the bottle, tore off the paper talisman that sealed the lid of the bottle, and then pulled out the cork of the bottle. A black soul object floated out of the bottle. Paper talismans were usually used by profound practitioners. Some paper talismans were used to seal spirit herbs with extremely high spirituality, so that the spirituality of spirit herbs would not dissipate with the passage of time. Others, as Dream Butterfly said, could be used to seal the souls of humans or other creatures. This paper talisman was covered in talismans. To put it bluntly, it was a small formation. It's a beast soul. Xiang Nan looked at the soul floating out of the bottle and said, "This is a big problem." Meng Dai did not know what was going on, so she hurriedly asked, "What exactly happened?" Xiang Nan said, the Profound Sky Sect dug up an ancient martial tomb and found a strange technique that allowed humans to combine with the demon race. In the 12 sect joint examination, I met a person like him. His name is Xiang Long, and the person he is combining with is a type of barbarian bull demonic beast. Back in the joint examination competition, Xiang Long used this half-demon body to display his almost crushing martial arts advantage. I've heard of this before. Meng Dai said, however, no matter how strong Xiang Long is, he is still not as strong as a fifth of the disciple of the Heavenly Profound Sect today, right? Yes. Xiang Nan nodded, because Xiang Long combined with the beast soul he used came from the martial origin calendar. Ah. I understand. Meng Dai's expression changed drastically as she said, the reason why the Profound Sky Sect came to the Devil's Sea is to search for ancient demonic beasts. That disciple just now was able to merge with the beast soul of the ancient demonic beast, that's why he became so powerful. What a wonderful move. Xiang Nan gritted his teeth and said, to ordinary martial artists, the Devil's Sea is only a relatively rare treasure. But for the Profound Sky Sect, we can find extinct ancient demonic beasts here. If a human martial artist were to combine with the beast soul of an ancient demonic beast, his physical fitness would far surpass that of a human, and even surpass that of an ancient demonic beast. If that's the case, then... Meng Dai looked at the nearly 1,000 small bottles on the ground and her voice changed. It's really troublesome. The Heavenly Profound Sect is in the next big chess game. It is very likely that the martial Tao framework of the martial origin calendar will undergo tremendous changes as a result. Novel Empire. Immortal God of Battle.